When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a robot or to someone called Robert or Priya or Lewis or Zoe or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, it's Ali. Can I give you a hand?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Give yourself a Diet Coke break.
You always say the best thing you ever did was join up. I bet you don't get the same experiences in Civvy Street. Remember those incredible family adventures? And that feeling of being part of something special. We'd love to have you back. Go on. Feel the pride again. Search RAF Rejoiners.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from New York and New Jersey, I'm Jason Kelly. Welcome to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masser is taking a well-deserved day off. Paul Sweeney stepping in. P.S., how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you again. Just so much going on, and we enjoyed the long weekend here in New Jersey, but time to get back to work, and kind of an interesting Monday trading session here. You're seeing green on the screen, as they say.
Absolutely. Green on the screen against a very grim backdrop there in New Jersey. Yep. It's that things are turning a little bit, and certainly across the country, we're seeing a very bleak picture when it comes to the virus. But technology, some deal making, leading the way here, and enthusiasm. And I know you've been watching it all day. You're in your 18th hour of radio at this point.
Yeah. If 3 hours is good, 7 hours is better.
Absolutely. So we're happy to have you aboard, and a lot to get to on this Monday. First, let's understand what's going on with the numbers with Charlie Pellet. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much, and also a big warm welcome to Paul. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all surging today. Stock markets began the week on an upbeat mood after a front-page editorial in China's Security Times said that fostering, quote, a healthy bull market after the pandemic is now more important to the economy than ever. Stocks jumped, tech shares pushing the NASDAQ Composite Index to a record. Let's get right to the numbers, and let's begin with the year-to-date column on NASDAQ, up now by 16%. Today, the NASDAQ Composite Index up 193, up 197 points, now at 10,004. Again, 10,404, I should say. Again, that is a record for NASDAQ. S&P up 42, up 1.4%. The Dow up 384, up by 1.5%. 10 years down 8/30 seconds with a yield of 0.69%. Gold up $8 the ounce. That's a gain of 0.5% at $17.84, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.1%, $40.69 a barrel. Recapping, equities higher across the board. S&P up 42, up by 1.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. We'll hear from Charlie throughout the next few hours. Keep an eye on that trade and then the business headlines that are crossing. Paul Sweeney, let's set the Business Week agenda in the meantime. Sarah Ponczak is with us, cross-asset reporter for Bloomberg. She's on the phone from Florida. Dave Wilson, our stocks editor, author of the chart and stock of the day that you'll hear throughout the show. He's joining us from New Jersey. So, Dave, I want to start with you. We heard the numbers from Charlie. What's underneath this trade? Broad-based, tech-driven? How would you describe it?
Well, it's fairly broad-based at this point. You look at the 11 main industry groups in the S&P 500, you see 9 of them are higher. Energy stocks are a little changed. And utilities down. A lot of that is Dominion Energy, which not only made a deal to sell its natural gas pipeline and storage assets to Berkshire Hathaway for $4 billion, but also gave up on trying to build the Atlantic Coast natural gas pipeline. Dominion was in with Duke Energy on that pipeline that was going to cross the Appalachian Trail, had a lot of opposition. Dominion shares down more than 9%, Duke off 2.5% as well. You look at what's up today. I mean, sure, the technology companies kind of stand out. Amazon getting above $3,000 a share. It's up 4.4% at this point, crossed $1.5 trillion in market value. That's certainly a number that gets your attention. Tesla's up 9.5%. I mean, you talk about a stock that's really taken off. You can cite, sort of example after example of these kinds of companies kind of leading the way. That said, you do have sort of a few more stocks moving higher for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dave. I'm going to bring in Sarah Ponczak. Sarah, you came out with an interesting article yesterday talking about, we've had this huge rally off of the bottom. $10 trillion rally hinges on earnings. Nobody has a clue about that. Is such a great headline because we really don't have any real idea. We don't even have guidance from a lot of companies. So at what point do you think the market starts getting perhaps a little bit more fixated on earnings or the lack thereof?
Right. We don't have guidance. Bank of America had a great statistic that they put out towards the end of last week, and they showed that out of the 500 S&P 500 companies, 400 of them over the last 3 months failed to provide guidance. And yes, when banks kick off earnings season, now really in just about 10 days or so, less than 10 days, I mean, everyone expects these numbers to be horrible. It spans the 3 months through the end of June, which really encompassed the bulk of the lockdown and thereby the beginning of the reopening period. So the expectation is for a decline of 44% in S&P 500 corporate profits, which is the worst since the financial crisis. However, no one's going to look at these numbers and be extrapolating them out to the distance as the total run rate that we will see moving ahead. However, at this point, the idea is that companies have now been dealing with the virus for a couple of months. And at this point in time, investors might not be quite as forgiving in allowing them to just take a full-on pass, let it slide, and not giving any updates about the future. And when you think about whether or not investors are becoming a little bit concerned, I mean, as Dave mentioned, the rally today is broad-based. I'm looking at it right now, about 390 companies in the S&P higher. But you do see a disparity between your market cap weighted benchmarks and your equal weighted benchmarks, which means that much of the gains are being dominated from the likes of your FANG names like Amazon, above $3,000 a share today, Apple, Microsoft, I mean, you name them.
Yeah. I mean, so Sarah, I keep coming back to this disconnect, and everybody, I mean, even my mother-in-law this weekend was talking about it when we were visiting for the 4th of July. This notion that we look around, we see the economy, we see the headlines, and the market grinds higher and higher. And I just, I've heard the explanations. I still don't get it.
Right. I mean, your mother-in-law is certainly not the only one that is confused by this. I think many people are perplexed. But the explanations that we constantly hear are, one, you have to look at the amount of stimulus that's in the system. I mean, you have this complete Fed backstop. At the same time, right now, the expectation is that even though Congress is on recess, they will come together and there will be another fiscal package that will help the U.S. economy. At the same time, where else investors look is the idea that the stock market is a forward-looking mechanism. And I think this is also where this earnings season does become very important because as it stands, the idea is that if the stock market is a forward-looking mechanism, the stock market is looking for a 2021 rebound. However, we're still not 100% sure that that is going to happen. I mean, as it stands, expectations are for roughly $160 earnings a share, which is almost close to the 2019 peak levels. Now, when you look at what's happening with case counts rising, sure, many people will point to the fact that fatalities aren't ticking up yet. The median age is also lower as it relates to COVID. But we have to try to factor in what that means for the future of the economic recovery. And anything that detracts from those 2021 numbers, that can be an issue.
Yeah, and real quick, I mean, Citigroup, their global strategy team, is saying that, their earnings forecast for end of next year is 30% lower than the average. And yet, at the same time, they're still saying favor U.S. stocks because, for now, at least, they're going to do well.
Yeah. Yeah, so much to unpack. Thank you both so much. Sarah Ponzak, cross-asset reporter for Bloomberg. Check out her story on the Bloomberg and Bloomberg.com. A $10 trillion rally hinges on earnings nobody has a clue about. It was one of the most read over the weekend and today. Dave Wilson, stocks editor for Bloomberg, he'll be back with his chart. It is related to Amazon. Up next for us, Paul Sweeney. We've got a lot to get to. A trade expert, Stefan Seelig, one of our go-to voices on that, and also a super fun and kind of crazy heist story. Did you love this story?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I can't wait to get to the details with that.
Yeah, so Austin Carr wrote it. He's one of our faves as well, and he has a very personal aspect to this. So it's great. It'll be great to hear from him. All right, quickly, let's do the Bloomberg Businessweek Bite of the Day. It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number is 75. Yes, a little holdover from the July 4th weekend. Joey Chestnut and Mickey Sudo once again crushed the competition, the annual Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest on the 4th of July. Chestnut set a new record, 75 wieners, Paul Sweeney, in 10 minutes, 13th time in 14 years. Sudo wolfed down 48.5 for her 7th title. It's gross.
It's gross. I've seen it. Yeah, it is gross. But
there's
they
no
do
getting
it every
around
year.
it. But they do it every year. Yeah, and Chestnut is in the record books once again. All right, let's head down to Washington now. Nancy Lyons is there for World of National Headlines. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Jason. The White House is again rejecting calls for a national mask-wearing mandate. White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows says in an appearance on Fox and Friends this morning, the president sees the issue as a state-to-state matter.
That's done on a location basis when you can't have social distancing, but certainly a national mandate is not in order.
New Jersey's Democratic Governor Phil Murphy says the U.S. is only as strong as its weakest link. And with spikes in cases in Florida, South Carolina, and other southern states, he thinks a national mask requirement is a good idea. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld the federal ban on robocalls to mobile phones, rejecting a bid to topple the law on free speech grounds. The ruling is a defeat for political groups that had sought a new avenue for campaign activity in the months leading up to the November election. The High Court also ruled today that states can require presidential electors to back the popular vote winner. He had a hit with Devil Went Down to Georgia.
If you lose, the devil gets you so.
Charlie Daniels has died at the age of 83. His publicist says he died of a hemorrhagic stroke. President Trump went after NASCAR's only black driver today and criticized the league's decision to ban the Confederate flag at its races and venues. In a tweet today, President Trump wrongly accused Bubba Wallace of perpetrating a hoax after one of his crew members discovered a rope shaped like a noose in Wallace's garage stall. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons. This is Bloomberg.
Working from home, take a little more time for breakfast. Tom Keene.
How will this pandemic change your NASDAQ?
Jonathan Farrow.
When you look at that sector, some of these companies won't exist, will they?
And Lisa Abramowitz.
They've only continued to increase the delinquencies and defaults.
Crunch data topped with fresh world news. Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. And now, watch us on Bloomberg Television.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Reopening. The reopening roads.
Here's to you that learned with homeschooling that your kids are smarter than you. Here's to all the self-taught banana bread bakers. And to you that rock that very questionable homemade haircut. Costa is giving £3 to everyone that missed us as much as we missed you. Get your £3 in the Costa app today and enjoy a coffee, cake, or snack on us. Come on, you earned it. Terms and conditions apply. For details, visit costa.co.uk/terms.
When you're facing a problem, like how to make an electric car more efficient, you could sit down and talk it through. But at Honda, we decided to listen to the wind tunnel. With wing mirrors? Or without?
Yes.
With?
No.
Without?
Yes.
With?
No.
Without?
Yes.
Or with cameras instead of wing mirrors?
Sweet.
The new Honda E with wind cameras, not mirrors, because we listen to the wind. Honda, the power of dreams.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races. To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Outdoor gatherings? Wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Participate in events like these infrequently. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
First, we're told that masks don't work. Then, we're told to wear them all the time. One week, we hear that the mortality rate is 2%. The next, well, who knows? In the time of COVID-19, there is so much uncertainty, and so much scientists are learning in real time, along with the rest of the world. So it's hard to know what you can be sure of and what's still a big question mark. Enter Podcast 19 from 538, where we'll explore the evidence behind the science in our fight against coronavirus. I'm science journalist Anna Rothschild. Each week, I'll investigate coronavirus mysteries, keep track of the latest developments on vaccines and treatments. Oh, and I'll try to edit out all the times I shush my family since I'm recording this thing from the chaos of my home.
Search Podcast 19 to listen today.
Staying current on college hoops starts here on the Eye on College Basketball podcast. CBS sports columnists Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander bring you commentary, insider information, and statistical analysis covering the entire NCAA.
The amount of earning potential you could have had there, or if you had gone to play at any other place with a chance to play in the NCAA tournament, win a national championship, none of us would have faulted Cunningham for doing that, but he decided this is where he wants to be in the face of a postseason.
Search Eye on College Basketball on TuneIn to listen.
Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelota. And up Monday, tech shares leading the way. NASDAQ trading at a record. S&P heading toward its fifth straight increase. Amazon shares topped $3,000 for the first time. Tesla extending a 5-day rally to almost 40%. Uber surged after the company agreed to buy Postmates in a $2.65 billion stock deal. Uber shares up by 4.9%. Crosstown rival in San Francisco Lyft up by 3.2%. Here's where we stand. S&P up 37, a gain of 1.2%. The Dow up 352, up 1.4%. Have been up as much as 1.8% on the Dow. NASDAQ again at a record, up 170 points, up by 1.6%. 10 years down 6/32 with a yield of 0.68%. Gold up 0.5%, 17.85 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude holding above $40 a barrel, 40.83 WTI, up now by 0.4%. So recapping, a Monday rally underway with the S&P up 37, up 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pallett. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, let's check in with our go-to medical center here amid this virus outbreak, in part because this is where the first U.S. case of the coronavirus was confirmed. Dr. Joanne Roberts back with us, Chief Value Officer at Providence St. Joseph Health, on the phone from Everett, Washington. Dr. Roberts, really nice to have you with Paul and myself.
Oh, great to be back, Jason. Thank you.
So let me just cut right to it. Where are we here as a country in terms of dealing with this virus? And I fear that your answer is not going to be a happy one.
Well, I'm afraid it's not. And I think we've all heard from enough experts, including Dr. Fauci and Dr. Osterholm out of Minnesota, calling this, rather than thinking about COVID in waves, I think it's going to be for the next foreseeable future thinking about it as sort of a fire that's burning constantly, and that's what we're seeing. And we're with hot spots jumping out here and there, and that's what we're seeing across our organization as well, across the 7 states we serve.
So, Dr. Roberts, again, you and your hospital in your area of the country, the first hit. Talk to us about what you've seen and the life cycle just in your immediate area. How are the hospitals dealing? How are the people's behavior? Just give us a sense of how it's evolving in your area.
Well, again, I mean, I will speak for all of Providence, and we cover 7 states. But the first hospital was our hospital in Everett, Washington, to take the first patient, and that's where we really saw the first outbreak in the country, was in the Seattle area. Well, in Washington State, on the western side of Washington State, in Seattle, Everett, the Puget Sound, we've actually kept the case numbers down to a pretty low level, and we're seeing numbers of 10, 20 people in our hospitals on the western side of the state. On the negative side, on the eastern side of the state, the more rural side of the state, we've actually seen some significant growth, and that's one of our big hotspots. We have 3 hotspots across our 7 states that we're watching very closely now. One is eastern Washington. One is western Texas, and our fastest growing area is Orange County, California, by far. Orange County has become our number 1 hotspot across Providence today.
And so, Dr. Roberts, what's consistent across those hotspots? What can you generalize?
Well, we can all do our generalizations, but I think it all comes down to what our behaviors were in those hotspots 2 or 3 weeks ago. Remember, whatever we do today shows up 2 or 3 weeks from now in our hospitals. So the growth in those areas, I think, comes down to the issues of the masking, distancing, and hand washing that the science is leading us to, that if we do those things religiously, we can keep the numbers down. If we don't, we won't. It's just that simple.
So it's unfortunate, but Dr. Roberts, it seems like a lot of those things you just talked about, masking, social distancing, and so on, have become politicized. Is there any solution you see, or is it just more efforts, consistent efforts, greater efforts on education?
I think it's on us as the scientific community to speak to the science, and then it's on our leaders to underscore for their own states and their own communities what the right approach is. I won't pretend to say I know how best to do policy, but I haven't been impressed by several local leaders. Our governor in Washington has been a very strong advocate for enforced masking. The governor in Texas this weekend changed his mind and said that this is really important. So our leaders can change, and our leaders can step up and set an example. If nothing else, simply by putting on a mask themselves, that would go a long way.
And Dr. Roberts, when you look at the western side of the state, there where you are, and specifically in Seattle, because so many of our listeners are in big cities, do you have a sense that there is a certain amount of reopening that can be done? Because obviously this is ultimately both a health and an economic crisis, and it feels like that's the question that so many people want an answer to is, can we reopen in a smart and measured way and still contain this?
I think that we can, and I think the Seattle area is showing us how. Many workers, probably a disproportionate number of workers in Seattle can work from home. And most large systems, most large organizations are continuing to encourage their folks to work from home if they can. So that's a piece of it. And then those who are needing to come to the offices, I think our companies in the Northwest have been very responsible in protecting their people with insisting that they wear masks and really setting up their offices for more distancing.
Dr. Robert, just quickly before we ask you to come back, just give us a sense of how your folks in your system are doing, the healthcare providers.
Oh, I think it's tough. I think we're going through a very tough time. There's, there is a grief curve, and I think healthcare caregivers across the country rose to the occasion of the acute crisis, and now that we're moving into a more chronic phase, it's hard on our caregivers. It's hard on our country. And it's especially hard on our healthcare workers, and we definitely are seeing more need for our caregivers, and that is becoming a huge focus for us, is how do we support our caregivers over the next 3, 6, 12 months as we move through this.
All right, we're going to continue this conversation in just a few minutes. That was a really important point. I'm glad you asked that, Paul. Dr. Joanne Roberts, Chief Value Officer for Providence St. Joseph Health, joining us on the phone from Everett, Washington. We're going to continue that conversation in just a minute. I want to talk to her about what she's seeing in terms of vaccines, but also as we head into the fall, Paul, thinking about, the flu and other things that we're going to have to be worried about.
Yeah, and it's there's treatments and there's vaccines, and that's kind of where the medical and scientific community is focused.
All right, that and much more ahead. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The bulls continue to run on Wall Street, with tech shares pushing the Nasdaq further into record territory. The Dow is up 374, the S&P up 39, the Nasdaq up 175. Amazon is up 4%, sending its stock past $3,000. Amazon has seen increased demand for its e-commerce and cloud computing services during the pandemic. Its stock is up about 80% since March. More retailers are joining Nike in pulling Washington Redskins merchandise from their online shops as the team reviews its controversial name. Barron's reports links to the team's landing page on both Walmart and Target's websites yielded no results. Last weekend's premiere of Hamilton sparked a surge in downloads of the Disney Plus app. Tracking service Apptopia says there were more than 266,000 U.S. downloads from Friday to Sunday, 72% more than the June average. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
COVID-19. Can the world reopen for business?
Give us a sense of how you're ramping up and taking care of folks on the ground.
What's the long-term impact?
Why will we not see a V-shaped recovery?
When will there be a cure or a vaccine?
How can you model that at a time when it's unclear whether we're going to see a resurgence in viruses?
The answers will emerge.
Can you give us a sense of timing?
And you'll find them here. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. The best of Bloomberg Business.
Here's to you that learned with homeschooling that your kids are smarter than you. Here's to all the self-taught banana bread bakers. And to you that rock that very questionable homemade haircut. Costa is giving £3 to everyone that missed us as much as we missed you. Get your £3 in the Costa app today and enjoy a coffee, cake, or snack on us. Come on, you earned it. Terms and conditions apply. For details, visit costa.co.uk/terms.
Honda. We're not a car company. We're more of a listening company. And now our ears have brought our attention to where people feel most comfortable. The lounge. So we asked ourselves, what could Honda do to innovate in this space? Well, how about more space? Calm and uncluttered, with modern yet retro styling, and built-in screens compatible with your games console. It's the most comfortable lounge you've ever driven. Introducing the new Honda E, our small electric city car. Honda. The power of dreams.
I was offered one.
I was offered one. Were you?
Yeah, I was offered one too.
1 2 1 2. I was offered one.
I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a robot or to someone called Robert, or Ethan, or Kai, or Rachel, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hi, I'm Ali. How can I help?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
At Simply Be, we've stepped up our sales so that you can step out in style. With up to 80% off summer clothing, you'll find some seriously must-have fashion at prices that are simply too good to miss. So go on, skip those weekend queues and treat yourself to something gorgeous. Shop the sale at simplybe.co.uk.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back, not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Stay close to college hoops conversation with the College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Doster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference, nostalgic flashbacks to classic games, and big picture discussions on the future of the sport.
Yes, they found a way to ensure that there was a financial incentive for be able to get paid for K to go there, if that makes sense. But it's not, there was still a recruitment involved, right? Let me think about it like this.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
First, we're told that masks don't work. Then, we're told to wear them all the time. One week, we hear that the mortality rate is 2%. The next, well, who knows? In the time of COVID-19, there is so much uncertainty, and so much scientists are learning in real time, along with the rest of the world. So it's hard to know what you can be sure of and what's still a big question mark. Enter Podcast 19 from 538, where we'll explore the evidence behind the science in our fight against coronavirus. I'm science journalist Anna Rothschild. Each week, I'll investigate coronavirus mysteries, keep track of the latest developments on vaccines and treatments. Oh, and I'll try to edit out all the times I shush my family since I'm recording this thing from the chaos of my home.
Search Podcast 19 to listen today.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Joanne Roberts out of Providence St. Joseph Health, a wide-ranging system there in the western United States, Paul, and a lot to ask her about what happens next.
Yep, absolutely. So it's a lot. You mentioned Western Texas, and I've been reading a lot about that. So
Yeah, it's a lot of hot spots. I was interested to hear the way, even some of the language that she's using. So eager to get back to that. First, let's get back to Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on the trade. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Jason Kelly. Happy Monday with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all rallying on this back-to-work Monday after a long holiday weekend. S&P now up by 40 points. That is a gain of 1.3%. The Dow's up 357, up 1.4%. NASDAQ up 191. That is a gain of 1.9%. 10 years down 630 seconds with a yield on the 10-year right now at 0.68%. S&P on track for its fifth straight increase. Amazon shares reaching $3,000 for the first time. Tesla extending a 5-day rally to almost 40%. Technology shares among the standouts. Stock markets began the week in an upbeat mood after a front-page editorial in China's Securities Times said that fostering a healthy bull market after the pandemic is now more important to the economy than ever. New Jersey's virus transmission rate jumped to the highest in 10 weeks. Governor Phil Murphy calls it, quote, an early warning sign that the state must redouble its efforts to keep COVID-19 from returning. Dr. Joshua Sharfstein is vice dean at the Bloomberg Johns Hopkins School of Public Health.
You know, there's a little bit of a shock to the system happening right now, and I think people are getting worried again. So I think we're seeing, people pull back, bars close, even governors who are sort of dismissive now taking this very, very seriously. So hopefully that will, avert the worst kinds of disasters. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to really control the virus anytime soon.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. As I mentioned, Amazon topping $3,000 for the first time, extending a rally that has left most Wall Street analysts in the dust. Amazon shares, again, they are surging today, up now by 4.9%. Facebook shares are pushing higher. Facebook says it will not process user data requests from the Hong Kong government amid concerns that a new security law could criminalize government protests. So Facebook shares, they are up now by 2.4%. Recapping equities higher, S&P up 41, now at 3171, up by 1.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. We appreciate that. We are so fortunate that we have some more time with Dr. Joanne Roberts. She's Chief Value Officer, Providence St. Joseph Hospital, big system in the Northwest and also in western part of Texas. Doctor, thanks so much for sticking with us. We want to switch gears a little bit and talk about, I think what a lot of people are really trying to focus on, we know a lot of smart scientists and other folks in the medical community are focusing on, that's treatments and that's vaccine. Give us just kind of the lay of the land where you think we are with getting a viable treatment into the marketplace and then ultimately a vaccine.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled that we are moving as fast as we are with treatments. We're moving faster than I had expected we would. I think the finding out of England with dexamethasone for very severely ill people and cutting the mortality rate. The findings in our own system, we've been very heavily involved with clinical trials of several agents, including remdesivir. And I think remdesivir is showing a lot of promise. Now the challenge is figuring out when is the best time to give remdesivir. Is it early in the disease? Is it late in the disease? That's what we're studying now. And then we'll be having studies of monoclonal antibodies coming out later this year. So I think that's all for the good. Nothing is a magic bullet. Everything is helping a little bit, and it will accumulate as we move through the year.
And that accumulation, help us understand that, Dr. Roberts. I mean, that accumulation, some sort of acceleration toward both therapeutics and vaccines, what does that look like in a realistic time frame for a scenario in which we're actually putting a dent in this in a way that affects our daily lives, if you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I do. I think we are starting to see a dent in the mortality rates, and we'll know that certainly in the next month because the uptick we're seeing in the virus itself is going to translate into hospitalizations here in the next week or so, and that will translate into sort of reliable mortality data in the next month or so. So we'll be able to tell in the next month or so how much of a dent, say, remdesivir has made. But new agents are coming out. I would say, I think in terms of month by month, when it comes to treatments, and then I think of quarter by quarter when we're talking about vaccines.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so, Doctor, do you envision this being some type of cocktail, if you will, of treatments as it relates to treatments as we kind of get into the fall and winter?
I do. I see it as a combination of drugs. Maybe they'll be given at different times in the trajectory of the illness. Maybe they'll be given at similar times, and I think that's still to be worked out. But I think we're already starting to see that it's not going to be one thing. It's going to be a series of small steps that, taken together, will change the trajectory.
And everybody's going to have to get a flu shot, right?
You bet.
Yeah.
If you can do one thing this year besides put on a mask, it's get a flu shot.
Right. I mean, do you think that, do you get the sense, just sticking with that for a second, that people are at least more aware of that? You know, the importance of getting, excuse me, something that will, help even tamp down the effects of the disease, any disease at this point?
Yes, I do. And I think we are seeing the reaction. And the areas of the country that were hit the hardest early on are actually some of the areas we're seeing the best progress in. And I look at New York as a great example. Infection rates have plummeted in New York because people are taking it very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest to that, and I think you can too, Paul. Our daily lives, whether it's our work lives or our personal lives, I mean, we have seen a pretty incredible and pretty broad-based reaction here. Dr. Joanne Roberts, thank you so much, Chief Value Officer, Providence St. Joseph Health. It's a big health system dealing, unfortunately, with a lot of hotspots right now, or several big hotspots, as she laid out for us in Orange County in western Texas and eastern Washington State. So we rely so heavily on them for their expertise. They have been in this literally, Paul, since the beginning.
They've got the experience, don't they? I mean, they've really seen it. And I think we're seeing, you'd like to think, and I do expect the healthcare system will be better prepared as we go into the fall and winter versus, the shock of when it just came across you. And you think about, tents out in Central Park dealing with the overflow of patients that Tom Keene was able to post from his apartment on Twitter. Just hopefully we won't get to that point again.
Absolutely, yeah. Hopefully there are a lot of lessons learned, but, you do worry about something she said in the first part of our conversation about that you rightly asked about healthcare workers and just the stress and strain on them. I mean, you think about the anxiety level of just normal folks, but the anxiety level and the stress for them has got to be just unbelievable. So in any case, something to keep an eye on. Let's get down to Washington now. Nancy Lyons is there with some world and national headlines. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, Jason. The Supreme Court says states can require presidential electors to back their state's popular vote winner in the Electoral College. The unanimous ruling today, just under 4 months before the 2020 election, leaves in place laws in 32 states and the District of Columbia that bind electors to vote for the popular vote winner, which electors almost always do anyway. The next CARES Act is still a work in progress, with lawmakers considering whether American workers need another stimulus check. White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows vows that Americans will be taken care of, but he refused to guarantee another check.
I think the president's been very clear that he's supportive of another stimulus check, and yet at the same time, we want to make sure that we're addressing things in a real systemic way.
Meadows says another option would be a payroll tax deduction. Another might be offering incentives for manufacturers to bring jobs back to the U.S. An open letter by hundreds of scientists claims the World Health Organization is ignoring emerging evidence that the coronavirus could linger in the air indoors and that wearing masks would be vital even when you're inside. Dr. Ashish Jha is director of the Harvard Global Health Institute.
We have a long way to go in this pandemic, and if we want our economy open, if we want our lives back, a fundamental part of that is going to be wearing masks. It feels to me like a pretty cheap and easy thing to do, and I don't know why we as a country haven't really made this a national goal. We really should.
The White House rejects calls for a national mask-wearing mandate. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg. Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
COVID-19. On days when
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
How do we control coronavirus now? This is Scott. He's a nurse.
NHS Test and Trace helps stop the spread of the virus in our communities. If you've got symptoms, even mild ones, get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we can trace the people you've been in contact with and contain the virus. So get tested and protect each other.
To get a test, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Honda. We're not a car company. We're more of a listening company. And now our ears have brought our attention to where people feel most comfortable. The lounge. So we asked ourselves, what could Honda do to innovate in this space? Well, how about more space? Calm and uncluttered, with modern yet retro styling, and built-in screens compatible with your games console. It's the most comfortable lounge you've ever driven. Introducing the new Honda E, our small electric city car. Honda. The power of dreams.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Where do hockey and pop culture coexist?
So let me get this straight. You would be able to name more people nostalgically than currently? This doesn't.
Come on, it's crazy. I know.
Other podcast Puck Soup NHL analyst Greg Wyshynski, Sean McAdoo, and Ryan Lambert chase the conversational biscuit up and down the ice, skating between serious discussion on what's happening in pro hockey to irreverent opinions on movies, fast food, and life in general. Search Puck Soup on TuneIn to listen. Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet, back to work Monday after a long holiday weekend. Stocks are jumping, tech shares pushing NASDAQ to a record. Stock markets begin the week with an upbeat mood after a front-page editorial in China's Securities Times said that fostering, quote, a healthy bull market after the pandemic is now more important to the economy than ever. S&P on track for its fifth straight increase. Amazon shares reaching $3,000 for the first time. S&P up 39, a gain of 1.3%. The Dow rallying 346, up 1.3%. NASDAQ is up 192 at 10,400, even up 1.9%. 10 years down 5/30 seconds. The yield 0.68%. Gold up 0.5%, 17.85 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude now down 0.1%, $40.62 a barrel for West Texas Intermediate crude. Sanctuary Wealth has added a 6-person team, an all-woman team from Morgan Stanley to expand in the Midwest. The group had been based in Lawrence, Kansas, previously managed about $500 million in assets with Morgan Stanley, where they were known as the Hill Group. Again, recapping equities higher, S&P up 38, up 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Paul Sweeney, I'm going to make a confession to you right here on the air.
Go for it.
That confession is that I usually read most of the stories that we're going to talk about. You know, it's like, but sometimes I just read like half or something, just to get the idea, because I feel like I know the writers are brilliant. They're going to tell me a tale. I read every single word of this story. It's so amazing. Austin Carr, tech reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from New Hampshire. All right, so Austin, I was intrigued by the headline, you know, sort of Fire Festival. You had me there. Then pizza. But then this story just takes a turn because, like some of your best work, it's got a personal aspect to it. Take us through this. Like, take us back to the beginning in terms of like how this story gets hatched for the heist issue.
Totally. So this is a really fun, but also, frankly, disturbing profile of a guy named Ishmael Osekre, who is sort of this alleged scam artist of the social media era, who has proven, well, very adept at leveraging Facebook and the networking effects of going viral to according to the New York State Attorney General case against this guy Osekre, to take advantage of hapless internet users. So this story, both my part in it, and I do play a role backwardly in the first person in the story, but it begins with this sort of infamous, as you mentioned, the Fire Festival, the quote Fire Festival of Pizza, this major event in September 2017 where, you know, this guy Osekre launched an event called the New York City Pizza and Hamburger Festival. But in essence, there wasn't really any pizza or hamburgers. And leading up to the event, he'd promoted heavily on Facebook, and tens of thousands of people liked or signaled that they were going to actually attend. But when ticket holders arrived on the day of the event in 2017, they actually just found barely any food at all. The pizza slices were cut into sort of these Hobbit-sized miniature triangles, which if you find pictures online, you cannot help but LOL. And they were sort of nowhere close to what the digital ads that have been hyping stuff-your-face amounts of local thin crust and Chicago deep dish, et cetera. And in the end, none of the customers really got what they paid for or were promised. None of the vendors, a lot of them were stiffed out of their bill in terms of providing whether that's food or furniture for the event. And Osekre, according to the state investigation against him, made off with $63,000 in ticket sales from this pizza and hamburger festival. And so back in 2017, all of a sudden, out of the blue, I got an email about the event, which went viral, like the event itself. And it was just an old college classmate just saying, hey, do you recognize this guy's name? And, of course, I did. And, in fact, I, from what I would soon learn, was essentially one of the victims of one of his original grifts, you could argue.
Interesting. So, Austin, what happened to Mr. Osekre?
So at that time, he actually got away with the pizza festival. Afterward, the only consequence really was that Eventbrite and Facebook and other platforms which he used to sell tickets, because there were such complaints online about the event, were able to claw back some of the money, but he essentially got off scot-free. And this has been a pattern. He threw a big event in 2016 where he made off with, again, according to the allegations made in the New York State Attorney General case, he made about $111,000 in ticket proceeds. So these are not million-dollar heists, but at the same time, they're so almost comically and hilariously clever that you can't help at what grift he had pulled off, allegedly. But this story gets serious as we start reporting it. And it was just, I was both exploring this guy, who he was and what was driving him. He has this fascinating upbringing in Ghana, and then he went to Columbia University in the U.S., in New York, and that's where we had actually overlapped. And I just wanted to figure out, is this guy actually sort of the monster that the Attorney General of New York makes him out to be, or is he just misunderstood?
Yeah, I mean, if Carol Master were here, she would say, you can already see this as like a Netflix movie, right? I mean, it's so cinematic in many ways. But take us back, because you had, as you write really well in the story, you had a front row seat, as they say, to this. Tell us about that scam, because it's very instructive into what he allegedly, as you say, turns out to be later in life.
So back at, this was like the mid-2000s at Columbia University, and some of this, I just, up front, I was a bit of a nerd back then. And
I don't believe it. You're the coolest guy I know.
That's what my fiance says. But I was at Columbia, and I was at this, what was a student-run record label. We were just put on campus shows. It was very amateur, but very fun. And it was just to get kids, our students who wanted to perform, to get them some stage exposure. And we treated it like we were, actually a legitimate record label, which we very much were not. At some point in 2007, the same guy, Osekwe, who had a fascinating upbringing, which I was not aware at the time of growing up in Accra, the capital of Ghana, going to some, according to him, some of the most prestigious schools in that country, and then making it to Columbia by the skin of his teeth, essentially. It's a very impressive trajectory. And, he gets to 2007, we're both overlapping, and he tells me through a friend that he can book the Roots and Questlove for this Columbia University performance, just a small...
Like 150 people, right?
There was no stage in the room.
Yeah.
It was on a very, fifth floor of just one of the student buildings. And for some reason, I didn't think that was odd that we could book the Roots, who had at that time been playing Giant Stadium, or what was called then Giant Stadium. And lo and behold, the story just kept changing as we kept getting closer to the event. Osekwe would tell us that actually the Roots weren't performing. They were appearing as, quote, motivational speakers, whatever that means. Then it became only a DJ was coming. And it just kept evolving until it was a former affiliate act named Martin Luther, along with another rapper named Black Ice, who was going to come to the show, provided we could provide $5,000, which, just so you're aware, those are, for a student budget, was sort of Bon Jovi rate.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things, Austin, just because we're about to run out of time, but 30 seconds, I mean, one of the things that he proves out at that point is he does manage, it looks like, to almost always stick somebody else with the bill.
Correct. And in the last 30 seconds, I will just say I was, yes, very much won over by his, he was, even back then, early days of Facebook, he was promoting it on the platform and had promised it was financed through a variety of student council clubs, and that just didn't turn out to be the case. And our club and a bunch of others were sort of stuck putting the bill in a pattern that would play out in the decades ahead, which is just a really fascinating story. I urge everyone to read it.
It's really terrific. It's really terrific, and you really do get a sense of this pattern of behavior, and bravo to Austin Carr. It's another great tale by him, tech reporter for Bloomberg. The story, Fire Festival of Pizza wasn't accused fraudster's first flop, and Austin Carr knows what it is. Yeah. Anyway, so it's a great story. For those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continues. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business, that's coming up next. Coming up next, right here with me and Paul Sweeney, we're going to talk to Chris Condon about the Fed. Much more ahead here on a Monday edition of Bloomberg Business Week.
At the start of every day, you can't...
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
As shops open up again, how do we all stay safe? Fontaine runs a craft store.
We've made the shop COVID safe. If you can't keep 2 metres apart, make sure it's 1 metre with extra precautions. Know the number of customers allowed in at any one time. Use the hand sanitizer at the entrance and use contactless payments. I'm loving serving customers again, but please, to keep us open, we've all got to keep to the guidelines.
Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
There's lots to discover when you join Tesco Mobile, like the incredible iPhone SE with its Retina HD display. Perfect for streaming on the go for just $19.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. But hurry, offer ends 12th of July. Visit us in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 12th of the 7th 20 was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status, 99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Outdoor activities, wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Avoid shared surfaces like swings or benches. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn. Who says only the experts get to do the talking? On the Scuttle Puck NHL Hockey Podcast, irreverent outsiders Mike Bond and Dale Horde give their untrained opinions on all things hockey from the fans' perspective.
I don't know how you get those guys out of there. And Crosby, as great as he's been, it's just such a different era, so it's tough with the... He didn't have the crazy number of points that Orr, Lemieux, and Gretzky did. They just...
Search Scuttle Puck on TuneIn to listen.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this back-to-work Monday. Stocks are jumping. Technology shares pushing NASDAQ to a record. S&P on track for its 5th straight increase as Amazon shares reach $3,000 for the first time. Tesla is extending a 5-day rally to almost 40%. Stock markets began the week in an upbeat mood after a front-page editorial in China's Securities Times said that fostering, quote, a healthy bull market after the pandemic is now more important to the economy than ever. Shanghai Composite Index posted its biggest advance since 2015. Got to keep it locked into Bloomberg Radio to see where we finish today's session. And of course, we've got you covered on Daybreak Asia tonight to find out how Asian markets will continue the rally, perhaps. S&P up now by 40, a gain of 1.3%, now at 3170. The Dow up 355, up 1.4%. NASDAQ up 195 points. That is a gain of 1.9%. 10 years down 430 seconds with a yield of 0.68%. Gold up 0.6 at $17.85 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude, we'll call it little changed, $40.63 a barrel on West Texas Intermediate crude. Wall Street continues to digest Friday's jobs report. As for where the labor economy stands, Ethan Harris is head of global economic research at Bank of America Securities.
We've had massive layoffs. Companies have now brought back about a third of the people that they fired in March and April. So we're moving very quickly in the right direction, at least in May and June. But on the other side of the equation, you have the ongoing new layoffs. And as we move forward, those easy rehirings start to fade a bit, and we focus much more on the new layoffs.
Uber is buying Postmates for $2.65 billion in stock to expand in food delivery after the coronavirus pandemic, greater demand for ride-hailing, its main business, and an earlier attempt to acquire Grubhub founder. Uber shares are up now by 5.75%. Lyft is up 4.1%. Grubhub up by 3.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm Paul Sweeney, sitting in for Carol Masser alongside Jason Kelly. You know, when the pandemic hit and then the U.S. economy ground to a halt just so quickly, the Fed was right there. By most accounts, the Fed has done a wonderful job here dealing with this pandemic and the economic impact by injecting liquidity into the marketplace. They were early, they were aggressive, and by most accounts, they were effective. Now the question becomes, okay, what have you done for me lately? What's next? Christopher Condon, Federal Reserve and U.S. economy reporter for Bloomberg News, joins us on the phone from Herndon, Virginia. So, Chris, again, the Fed's done a good job. What do Fed watchers expect next out of this Federal Reserve?
Right, Paul. Well, basically it comes down to what kind of formal guidance is the Fed going to give the markets about how long they intend to stay at this sort of maximum setting of rates being near zero and buying lots of bonds, or otherwise explaining what it would take, what sort of conditions would eventually make them get off of zero. Everybody knows that's going to be a long time, but the market can be quite reassured, and that can help lower long-term rates if the Fed is more explicit about the conditions it would take for it to get away from zero.
And so I guess inflation is something that everyone's constantly thinking about, maybe some more so than others, but how does that play into this whole equation and theory and prediction game of what they do, Chris?
Well, as you know, the Fed has two mandates, and that's to keep prices stable, which they interpret as trying to keep inflation at or around 2%, and otherwise to have maximum sustainable employment. So keep unemployment low, in other words. And there's been this debate over, how should they signal what it would take for them to move? Should they connect it to what happens in unemployment or inflation? Well, the minutes that came out last week made it pretty clear that a large part of the committee is leaning heavily towards linking any future significant movements in policy to the performance of inflation. So, essentially they're leaning toward a position, and this is not finalized, I want to stress, but they're leaning towards a position that would say something like, we're not going to move off zero until inflation reaches at least 2%, and indeed would like to see it go above that target for some period of time before we really start to get going on rates, which is a very interesting position and links to the longer-term review that they were doing of policy and their policy tools before this crisis even hit.
So, Chris, that's, to me, when I hear that explanation, which makes sense, it's clear, but it's also clear to me that we're going to be lower rates for longer, because I'm just not sure what gets us to a level sustainably above 2% inflation.
Right. You're absolutely correct. I mean, if you look at the projections, the economic projections that Fed officials have submitted most recently, they really don't expect the Fed funds rate to move off of zero until at least 2023.
Wow.
It seems strange to talk about adding these qualifiers on now, but the fact is the market investors will still change their behavior if they're reassured in another way that the Fed is not going to move away from zero for quite a long time. For instance, by saying until inflation exceeds 2%. That really does have a real impact on yields. It has an impact even on stocks. So overall will ease financial conditions if they follow through with this.
I mean, I just want to pause for a second and marvel at that afresh, Chris and Paul. This idea that 2023, I mean, it's one of those other things of so many that if you said to someone 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, that in mid-2020, this is what we're going to be talking about when it comes to interest rate. I mean, no one would believe you. It feels like fiction so unbelievable that people are like, try again. Come on, that's silly. Right?
Well, but here's the thing, Jason, though. We never knew when exactly we were going to hit a recession or what exactly would cause it. But there was already a lot of preparation for this situation that we found ourselves in with a recession very quickly moving rates to zero. We already knew. I mean, they had only reached a maximum of, I think, 2.5%. Right. The Fed was long worried about what would happen when the next downturn came, how much ammunition they would have, what would they do when they got to the zero lower bound. So it's not like, yes, it's absolutely a surprise that we got here. You know, who would have thought of this in February?
Right.
But, you know, we're in a situation, though, that is otherwise predictable, though, in terms of...
I guess my point is more... I guess my point, Chris, is I still marvel at that idea that they're very confident about saying, look, it's going to be 23 before we really revisit this. I mean, that to me is mind-boggling.
Yes, it's a long way out. But I think it just comes down to them not imagining, things improving enough before then. It speaks to their expectation that unemployment will remain very high. We're seeing, as you know, a really strong bounce back in employment. A lot of people are coming back to work, but the expectation really is that rigid bounce back will peter out before we've gotten anywhere close to back where we were in February. And then we'll have a very long, difficult slog trying to get it down to, say, even down below 5%, whereas we were at 3.5% in February.
And that's where that dual mandate comes in. You're exactly right.
Absolutely. Chris Condon, thanks so much for joining us. Chris is a Federal Reserve and U.S. economy reporter for Bloomberg News. And Jason, one strategist characterized the Fed and the markets as the Fed is effectively backstopping the markets. Yeah. And that's what really resonated with me, that phraseology.
I think that's exactly true. I think that's the answer to the question that we were talking about with Sarah Ponczak at the top of the show. It's like, what do you make of this disconnect? It's Jay Powell.
Yeah, it's Jay Powell. And I'm not, I guess one of the questions I like to have for someone is just, do you think the Fed is comfortable with that characterization? But that's clearly the signaling they're sending out there, and that's what the markets are certainly reacting to. So very interesting. Right now, let's head on down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nancy Lyons. Nancy.
Hey, Paul. Thanks. The rate of coronavirus cases is showing signs of slowing in both Florida and Arizona. But New Jersey is looking at the highest rate of spread in 10 weeks. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy.
For the last 2 days, our rate of transmission, or RT, has been at 1.03. This means that for every new case of COVID we are seeing, that case is leading to at least one other new case. This means increasing rate of spread statewide. This is an early warning sign that, quite frankly, we need to do more.
Well, President Trump says 99% of coronavirus cases are totally harmless. But Dr. Howard Koh, chair of the Harvard School of Public Health, says the virus is 100% dangerous and a national mask mandate is necessary. He tells Bloomberg we must promote masks as a path to more freedoms.
It gives you the freedom to go out in society and help the economy move again. It helps give you the freedom from infection and hospitalization. And right now, we don't have a cure, despite the fact that there's been advances in therapeutics. We don't have an FDA-approved vaccine. But until that vaccine comes, hopefully sooner rather than later, masks represent the best vaccines we have.
The White House is against a national mask mandate. The U.S. Supreme Court has rejected contentions. The Constitution gives presidential electors the right to vote as they please, no matter who won the state's popular vote. Today's ruling was unanimous. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Even when you're just beginning to leave your house, you see a bigger world.
The company is a clear winner from the virus lockdowns.
He's saying a new cycle has started.
And it may never be the same.
Does all of this boost in work mean that you're going to expand?
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
What could there be that could change this?
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern.
What was the most striking thing about your research?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
How long? How much? How many?
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this evening. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and talk laptops and washing machines or fridges and TVs. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Here's to you that learned with homeschooling that your kids are smarter than you. Here's to all the self-taught banana bread bakers. And to you that rock that very questionable homemade haircut. Costa is giving £3 to everyone that missed us as much as we missed you. Get your £3 in the Costa app today and enjoy a coffee, cake, or snack on us. Come on, you earned it. Terms and conditions apply. For details, visit costa.co.uk/terms.
So I often struggled at school. Once, when we had a maths test, I looked around the room and everyone was just doing it. And I couldn't, and I began to cry. But my teacher came over and said, it might look like one big problem, but it's just a handful of small ones, and you can deal with that. I hear her voice in my head for every problem I face to this day.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. You could get £26,000 tax-free to train as a teacher. Subject to eligibility, selected subjects only. Search Get Into Teaching.
Short on time? Don't worry. You can still get your cook on with Asda. Get 3 Asda ready meals for just £5.50. Like our beef lasagna or our tomato and mozzarella panette bake. Hang up your oven gloves. We've got dinner covered. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines, subject to availability. Meals 400 grams, £2.10 each.
At Simply Be, we've stepped up our sales so that you can step out in style. With up to 80% off summer clothing, you'll find some seriously must-have fashion at prices that are simply too good to miss. So go on, skip those weekend queues and treat yourself to something gorgeous. Shop the sale at simplybe.co.uk.
The big Volkswagen event is now on. If you're after a new Volkswagen, we offer to pay your first 3 months finance payments and an additional £500 to £1,000 contribution to your deposit at 3.8% APR representative. Hello, sir. Do any take your fancy?
Well, yes, a new Golf or T-Cross. A Tiguan. No, Passat. Oh, I need to sit down.
Here, have a seat.
The big Volkswagen event. With every type of car on offer, you may have trouble choosing. With Solutions Personal Contract Plan until 12th of July, excludes e-Golf at participating retailers only. Minimum 46 months to receive 3 months finance payments. Indemnities may be required. Volkswagen Finance. Contact your local retailer to book an appointment.
Did somebody say just me?
Get delivery like a G. See? Hungry
hungry dogs gotta eat. I get mines every day, every week. Chicken wings to the crib, I'm sitting in. Burger in the low. Hope they put the pickle in. Wonton on a catamaran. Oodles and noodles, thank you, my man. Justeat.
Somebody say, just eat.
Give yourself a Diet Coke break.
Thanks to National Lottery players, the Emerald Centre are now providing emergency food supplies and support for people in Bedfordshire like Alan. Thank you. And £600 million of National Lottery funding is on its way to thousands more local projects in England and across the UK during these exceptional times.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. On Up Monday, let's head right over to the First Word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. There he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. That's right. U.S. stocks climbing today, helped by a 5.7% surge in Shanghai overnight. Dow's currently up 335 points. S&P's gained 38. NASDAQ climbs by 191. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.68%. Gold trading higher by 13. WTI crude futures are a little changed, and transports rise 122 points. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Goldman Sachs, Boeing, and Walgreens. Walmart and Home Depot led to the downside. In deal news, Cena received a going private proposal for $41 a share, and Uber to buy Postmates in a $2.65 billion all-stock deal. Wrapping things up, Amazon soared through $3,000 a share, and Tesla gained 11%. Live from the First Word breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, Bill and Fido, we thank you very much. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I fully confess. Thank you, Charlie. I love the dogs in the background. Dogs and babies.
Right. It sounded like Vet Bill, actually. I was thinking.
Exactly. Now, listen, this is the Zoom work at home world we are living in. All right. On that note, let's head up to New Hampshire. Check in with Andy Brown, editorial director for Bloomberg New Economy. Paul, he is a regular on this show. I know you know him as well. His stuff on China and specifically on Hong Kong is must read for sure. And his column today is no exception. Hong Kong's new reality arrives in force, and what a whirlwind it's been there over the past few weeks. Andy, on the phone with us. So, Andy, I don't think we've really gotten a chance to kind of dig in with you since really all of this happened in such a meaningful way there. What's your initial reaction before we get into the meat of your column in terms of what's happened to Hong Kong and between Hong Kong and Beijing over the past couple of weeks?
Well, look, we have to be very clear about what's happened here. This is a premature takeover of Hong Kong by mainland Chinese authorities. Hong Kong's autonomy, one country, two systems, was supposed to last for 50 years after the 1997 handover. And the passage of this new national security law really brings that one country, two systems towards a close and ushers in a period where one country is far more important than the two systems.
So, and I was there in 1997 during the handover, just coincidentally on business, and I remember thinking to myself, this is not going to end well. I don't buy the 50-year thing. There's just too much value in Hong Kong to see China just, not maximize it, if you will. Is this kind of the end of Hong Kong as we know it?
I really think it is. I think what we can expect to see now is an increased pace of emigration from the city. The moneyed, professional, educated classes, I think, are going to start to leave. And I think what we're seeing now is an acceptance by business that there is a different reality in Hong Kong, and that, as in China, politics are in command.
And so, Andy, and this is a parochial question, and I feel like I always end up asking you this, but I feel like I have to, which is, I think about our customers, I think about our listeners and viewers, and many of them are in financial services. Many of them work for companies who have built, as you are much more aware than I am, massive outposts in Hong Kong. What's the future of those jobs, of that assignment that so many people, took advantage of to sort of build out their resume and build out their sort of global cred by going to Hong Kong?
Well, I think it's going to be much less of a global city and much more of a city that's inwardly focused on China and its financial needs. Look, this new national security law criminalizes a whole range of political activity and expression and undermines the judiciary, the independence of the judiciary, which underpins a free society. And to that extent, it's going to have a big, immediate impact on many professionals operating in Hong Kong. Legal professionals are an obvious example. Media, publishing. And the whole NGO world is going to be looking at this with quite some nervousness.
Yeah.
But also economic analysis and forecasting, brokerage research. These are very sensitive areas within China, and people engaged in all of these areas are going to start to ask themselves, do I really have a future in this territory?
Andy, is there a front runner for who might, over the coming years and decades, take the place of Hong Kong as one of Asia's most vibrant economic and financial hubs?
Yeah, I think probably many of the functions, the international functions that Hong Kong was so masterful at handling, will scatter to other financial centers in Asia, to Singapore, to Tokyo. Tokyo and Taipei are actively courting Chinese business. But in the short term, at least, it could actually be a boost to Hong Kong. I mean, you're seeing companies lining up, foreign companies as well as domestic companies lining up to show their support for this new national security law. And there is a sort of a relief, right, that the violence and vandalism that accompany these mass protest demonstrations for democracy really brought much of Hong Kong's economy to heal, and yet the very fact that they're lining up to show their support is also a highly negative signal. Again, it's showing that in the new Hong Kong, the CCP calls the shots. Woe betide Hong Kong companies that don't toe the party line.
Yeah, pretty amazing. All right, Andy Brown, editorial director for Bloomberg New Economy, joining us on the phone from New Hampshire. And, in part because he mentioned it, Paul Sweeney, I sort of turned this question on you, having worked on Wall Street, having worked on the research side before you came to Bloomberg Intelligence and ultimately to Bloomberg Radio. Like, how do you see Hong Kong change? Like, I mean, I'm sure you talk to friends over there, and I mean, what are they saying? I'm from the generation that you had to do a tour in Hong Kong for your, as you said, your global cred, and London as well, but Hong Kong and Tokyo. But it's really tragic is what it is, because so many great companies, so many great people, so many great work and business and things getting done in Hong Kong. And at Bloomberg Intelligence, when we launched our Asia business, we had the choice where to base it: Tokyo, Hong Kong, a couple other places, Singapore, and we chose Hong Kong because that is the center of Asian finance, and I'm not sure that's going to be the case going forward. So it's really tragic, and hopefully the transition can be managed as peacefully as possible. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it's really a shame, and I think journalism is the same way. So many people, so many great talents came through there. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Technology continues to power a solid Wall Street advance. The major averages are sharply higher, led by the NASDAQ. The Dow Industrials are up 357, the S&P up 38, the NASDAQ up 184. Facebook says it won't process requests for user data from Hong Kong authorities while it conducts a human rights review of its new security law. Twitter has taken similar action. The companies fear the law could criminalize anti-government protests. Microsoft may be interested in buying AT&T's Warner Brothers interactive video game business, according to the tech website The Information. AT&T has not yet decided whether to sell, though it is said to be considering it. Walt Disney is teaming up with Colin Kaepernick to produce a series about racial and social injustices. It will be available on networks including ESPN, Hulu, and The Undefeated, an ESPN service that covers racial and cultural issues. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community. Support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
With COVID-19, so much is unknown.
Is this the worst you've seen?
But we are committed to getting you every piece of information we can as soon as we can.
Tell us about this first big win you have. What is it, 24 million N95 masks?
Fewer unknowns.
Who's winning here? Where is the pressure right now?
That's our goal.
What worries you the most? The time it's going to take for a vaccine?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. The market's in focus every business day.
Here's to you that learned with homeschooling that your kids are smarter than you. Here's to all the self-taught banana bread bakers. And to you that rock that very questionable homemade haircut. Costa is giving £3 to everyone that missed us as much as we missed you. Get your £3 in the Costa app today and enjoy a coffee, cake, or snack on us. Go on, you earned it. Terms and conditions apply. For details, visit costa.co.uk/terms.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back. Not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
Mr. Darren Waller, good to have you.
Yes, sir, it's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen.
Did you know that with TuneIn's local radio feature, you can stream live FM and AM stations broadcasting in your area? Discover local news, talk, and music stations. Navigate to the local radio section under Browse to listen locally on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
Ready for some straight talk on what's happening in the MLB? On the Barstool Sports Podcast starting 9, Dallas Brayton and Jared Carrabis cut through the BS to break down the league the way they really see it.
Yeah, we're continuing our little mini-series of college baseball coaches in addition to bringing you major league players from throughout the league. If you've been listening to Starting 9 for some time now, you know that we've had a big leaguer on every single episode for probably 2 years now.
Search Starting 9 on TuneIn to listen.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Home alone or with housemates, stay home as much as possible. Try to allow only people you live with into your home. Wash your hands. If you're sick, stay home and isolate from housemates. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, Kenan Thompson. He's the longest-running cast member ever on Saturday Night Live.
and it took him years to feel like he belonged.
It just never seemed real for so long. Like, I had such a hard time even associating myself being on the show for a long time. Like, I wouldn't watch, you know what I'm saying, just because I felt like I was ruining it.
Kenan Thompson joins us next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up, we've got Dave Wilson's chart of the day. Paul Sweeney, I think you're going to like it. It's got a little tech flavor to it, right? Yep. It's going to be a good one. All right, we always look forward to that. Plus, the song of the day. That's Charlie Pellet's favorite part of the entire show. We're going to turn it over to him for some headlines. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there. Another day where Dave plays the song, and I have no idea what it is, but I'll play along. Here's what's going on. We've got 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. They're all advancing off our session highs. Best level, we had the Dow up 469, up now by 375 points. The Dow's up 1.5%. I'll give you the why in a moment. Let's get the numbers out of the way here. S&P up 41, up 1.3%. NASDAQ surging 206 points, up by 2%. The 10-year on 430 seconds. The yield right now the yield is 0.68%. So the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing, with the S&P heading toward its fifth straight increase. Amazon shares, they're trading above $3,000 for the first time. Tesla extending a 5-day rally to almost 40%. Stocks jumped. Tech shares pushing NASDAQ again to a record. Dollar fell for a fifth day. Treasuries dipped. So an update across the board on Wall Street. New Jersey's virus transmission rate, though, jumping to the highest in 10 weeks. Governor Phil Murphy calling it, quote, an early warning sign that the state must redouble its efforts to keep COVID-19 from returning. Dr. Joshua Sharfstein is vice dean at the Bloomberg Johns Hopkins School of Public Health.
It is possible to control. I mean, other countries have been able to control really, serious outbreaks like this, and it starts with, starting to shut down a little bit again, which is what's happening in some places. But then you're going to have to keep that in place for a while so that the virus just doesn't have the chance to keep moving around, and that's what's been really hard for the United States.
He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television. The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg for the Philanthropies. Another update for Tesla shares, up 11% right now. Shares are advancing as JMP Securities lifts the electric car maker's price target by 43%. Shares of theme park operators Disney, SeaWorld Entertainment, and Comcast all rising today after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis praised their efforts on virus protection. We've got Disney up now by 1.5%, SeaWorld up 2.7%, Comcast up by 2.4%. Gold up 0.6%, $17.86 the ounce. Crude down 0.1%, $40.61 a barrel. Recapping, S&P up 40, up 1.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. I am Paul Sweeney, sitting in for Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Business Week. I have to say, so this is a little bit of a flex and kind of a weird coincidence. This song was on the playlist of the Peloton ride I was doing this morning, which is not a usual contribution, but
it's a song that stood the test of time. Let's put it
absolutely. Dave Wilson, great choice. R.I.P. Charlie Danis. Great song.
And I was all set to play a song from Ennio Morricone, who also died.
Yeah.
91. Heck, I mean, he even had his own tribute album, and you know who did the version of Once Upon a Time in the West on that album?
Tell me.
Bruce Springsteen.
There you go.
So it would have been a natural, but, you gotta give Charlie Daniels his due, not just the devil. I mean, the devil went down to Georgia. I can remember when that song came out and actually making a point of memorizing the lyrics. No, I'm not going to spit them back right now. I'm going to talk about my chart and talk about a company that's about as far away from Georgia as you can get and still be in the continental United States. We're talking Amazon.com, of course. And the way it's influencing what's happening in the stock market when it comes to consumer companies. Because, the index has two categories that are devoted to consumers. One is what they call the consumer discretionary category. That's where you find Amazon, other retailers, automakers, home builders, you name it. It's a real sort of hodgepodge of industry groups. And then you have consumer staples, food, beverage, tobacco, household products. And what's happened within the past week is that the ratio between those two indexes, consumer discretionary and consumer staples, has broken a record that was set in March 2000. It actually happened for the first time last month, but it's happened a couple of times within the past week. And that is really the Amazon influence, because if you go through the S&P 500 Consumer Discretionary Index, you see that more than 3/4 of the stocks are down for the year. And yet, the index is gaining strength because of Amazon. It's the most heavily weighted company by far. It was 43% at the end of last week. No doubt that number is higher, according to our calculations. And it's the top performer in the group this year. It was up 56% at the end of last week. Now, with today's gain, you're on the order of 60%. So it really sort of influences what's happening across industry groups. And that's what sort of jumped out from looking at these consumer stocks. And if you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
What's your reaction to that, Paul Sweeney? Did you see this coming?
It's right in line with what I've noticed about this market really over the last several years. On the way down, on the way up, it's a handful of stocks leading the market, and it calls into question what I learned in business school, which is to have a healthy market, you need to have breadth, and across sectors, across companies, and get a lot of names rising on good volume to confirm a market, and that's not kind of what we're getting.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Dave, and Sarah Ponzak pointed this out at the top of the show, and you did as well. When we look at this rally that we've been in the midst of now for quite some time, a couple months, I mean, it's a pretty small number of names. I mean, yes, broad-based in terms of some of the gains on any individual day, but this is just a small number, a small basket.
Yeah, I mean, some of that is just a function of how big the companies have become. When you talk about, Amazon at $1.5 trillion, and Microsoft and Apple at that same level, and Alphabet, the owner of Google, at more than $1 trillion. I mean, you take those four companies together, and you're talking about 20% of the S&P 500 right there. Yeah. And you throw in Facebook, that's another couple of percentage points. It just goes to show you how concentrated the market has become, as those stocks have done especially well over time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We will talk to you in less than a half an hour for your stock of the day. Good chart, and good shout out to Charlie Daniels, and that is a big passing, to say the least. And I love that song.
A good run that he had.
Yeah, he did. And a big influence on a lot of artists who came after him. All right, let's get down to Washington now. Nancy Lyons is there with World National Headlines. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Jason. U.S. Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia says the economic recovery from the coronavirus pandemic has been better than expected so far, and it will not be necessary to extend an emergency unemployment program that is set to end this month.
So I think we're really ahead of where we thought we'd be, and the $600 benefit, I think it's just right that it expires at the end of the month.
Scalia tells Bloomberg policies promoted by the president that incentivize business growth will help bring jobs back. Well, President Trump is blasting NASCAR for banning the Confederate flag, and he's accusing black driver Bubba Wallace of perpetrating a hoax involving a rope shaped like a noose in his garage. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany.
He rejects this notion that somehow NASCAR men and women who go to these sporting events are racist, when in fact, as it turns out, what we saw with the FBI report and the alleged incident of a hate crime, it was a complete indictment of the media's rush to judgment once again calling this a hate crime when the FBI completely dismissed that.
The president tweeted today asking if Wallace has apologized to all those great NASCAR drivers and officials who came to his aid. The Treasury Department is revealing a partial list of small businesses that received $521 billion in government loans due to the pandemic. The companies collectively employed 51 million people. 3 foundations associated with congressional caucuses turned up as loan recipients, as well as a company tied to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute each received PPP loans of between $350,000 and $1 million. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize.
Can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Yay! Just the news you needed this evening. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and talk laptops and washing machines or fridges and TVs. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Here's to you that learned with homeschooling that your kids are smarter than you. Here's to all the self-taught banana bread bakers. And to you that rocked that very questionable homemade haircut. Costa is giving £3 to everyone that missed us as much as we missed you. Get your £3 in the Costa app today and enjoy a coffee, cake, or snack on us. Come on. You earned it. Terms and conditions apply. For details, visit costa.co.uk/terms.
So I often struggled at school. Once, when we had a maths test, I looked around the room and everyone was just doing it. And I couldn't, and I began to cry. But my teacher came over and said, it might look like one big problem, but it's just a handful of small ones, and you can deal with that. I hear her voice in my head for every problem I face to this day.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. You could get £26,000 tax-free to train as a teacher. Subject to eligibility, selected subjects only. Search Get Into Teaching.
Are you ready to play?
This summer ITV Hub is fully loaded with loads more full series.
Gonna get messy.
Yeah, like it's fuller than ever. From Love Island to Liar, we have divas lined up back to back. Filmy and Sister. From the GC and the Ibiza Weekender reps to the Real Housewives, it's round full of lots and lots of...
This is getting too much now.
Laughs, tears and smiles. It's crammed full with full series like Quiz, Flesh and Blood, Harry's Heroes and Manx in Mumbai. We've grown, expanded and just gone a bit extra this summer.
Give me some on.
ITV Hub fully loaded this summer.
The best experience possible.
Did we mention it's looking fuller than ever?
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
At Simply Be, we've stepped up our sales so that you can step out in style. With up to 80% off summer clothing, you'll find some seriously must-have fashion at prices that are simply too good to miss. So go on, skip those weekend queues and treat yourself to something gorgeous. Shop the sale at simplybe.co.uk.
Did somebody say just me? Get delivery like a G. See, hungry dogs gotta eat. I get mines every day, every week. Chicken wings to the crib, I'm sitting in. Burger in the low. Hope they put the pickle in. Wonton on a catamaran. Oodles and noodles, thank you, my man. Justeat. Somebody say just eat.
At Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all holding on to gains. S&P heading towards its 5th straight increase. Amazon shares reaching $3,000 for the first time. Stocks are jumping. Technology shares pushing NASDAQ to a record. Here's where we stand. Right now we have got the S&P 500 index up 45. That is a gain of 1.5%. NASDAQ up 213. That is a gain right now of 2.1%. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 426, up by 1.8%. At the best level of the day, the Dow had been up by 469 points. 10-year down 430 seconds with a yield of 0.68%. Gold is up 0.6%, $17.86 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude flat, $40.65 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
Yeah, how about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
Interesting development here in the economy as the world really tries to deal with the economic fallout from the pandemic and various states of shutdown impacts across all industries. Now as the U.S. tries to reopen, we'll have to see how that proceeds on a state-by-state, region-by-region basis. And that certainly applies to the housing market. So to get the latest, we welcome Sam Dunlap. Sam's the Chief Investment Officer of Public Strategies at Angel Oak Capital Advisors, $9.1 billion under management. Joins us on the phone from Atlanta. Sam, thanks so much for joining us here. Just give us a sense of kind of, if you can give us a 30,000-foot view of kind of the housing market in this country. So many regions have been hit differently. The one common denominator is absolutely rock bottom mortgage rates should be some support, but we know there's a lot of variables out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I think, prior to, the COVID-19 crisis that clearly we that began this year, we were pretty bullish and optimistic on the outlook for U.S. housing going into the COVID crisis, and really coming out of it, we're even more so, really, to your point, not only due to the all-time lows that we see in mortgage rates and perhaps even headed lower, as the Fed is clearly committed here at the zero bound and getting an even more important rate, the primary and secondary mortgage rate, even lower, which we think will be very helpful and supportive for really improving the affordability aspect of U.S. housing. But really the key going into the COVID crisis was just the really tight supply and demand dynamic for U.S. housing. We think that's even going to be even more pronounced as we come out of the COVID crisis, as just the demand for single-family housing is just going to increase.
And Are there, I mean, I know you think a lot about it, and as a former Atlantan, I do too, Sam. I mean, you think about the Sun Belt and kind of how explosive the growth has been in the housing markets in some of those big cities as we think about those different markets. I mean, are there different kind of immigration patterns that start to affect how we think about housing stock and how we think about various markets here?
Yeah, we really took a step back and thought about it, as we're looking at our mid-year outlook and looking ahead after the pandemic emerged, and we really see some trends. We see the COVID outbreak is really positive for the suburbs, as we see more and more Americans perhaps leaving some of the metro areas and the multifamily developments and headed more towards the suburbs where, single family can clearly provide a yard and perhaps a retreat if we have a second wave and subsequent shutdowns of local economies. We see that as largely supportive for the suburbs. And then, let's not forget the collapse that we've seen in crude and just the drop in prices at the pump. That should really further corroborate perhaps a trend of the suburbs as just the cost of getting to and from work as we do get going again in the aftermath of the COVID crisis, perhaps even more supportive for the demand for housing in the suburbs.
Sam, talk to us about credit quality here. We've got, a lot of borrowers out of work now, and I suspect that we're going to start seeing that, mortgage delinquencies and credit cards and so on and so forth. What are you seeing so far in the housing market in these relatively early times here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as early, foreclosure moratoriums and the mortgage forbearance programs that we've seen have really, I would say, we're in the crosshairs of our credit investors as folks are worried about what would the ultimate delinquencies look like. At least for now, borrowers are estimated from a forbearance perspective to be in the high single digits, 8 to 9% from a forbearance perspective. And so while we expect delinquencies in mortgage credit as we look ahead, clearly due to the unfortunate impact of the significant amount of job loss and thinking about the headline unemployment rate at about 11%, that coincides with where we're seeing delinquencies broadly across mortgage credit. But I think what gives us confidence and why we're optimistic as credit investors and where we focus predominantly in RMBS is just the collateral that backs RMBS is that, even amid a pending default that we expect coming forward in the next couple of months is, the stability of that collateral value being U.S. homes, really supported by all the things we touched on, the improved affordability and also just the really tight supply and demand of U.S. housing should keep prices stable. And, when the ultimate recovery happens through the unfortunate foreclosure event that would result as the delinquencies remain high.
Sam, we've been talking a lot today on this show, and I feel like we talk about it every day. And I think, Paul, on your regular gig, Bloomberg Markets, you talk about this as well. The Fed and just the absolute power that it's had and the efficacy that it's had and all the actions that Jay Powell and his pals have taken there. What comes next from the Fed in your estimation, Sam?
We just couldn't agree more. And listening to your program early on, just the significant amount of stimulus is just, it's hard to describe how beneficial that's been to all risk markets, but particularly as it relates to the consumer and getting that transmission mechanism, particularly through these lower mortgage rates to the U.S. borrowers. And we think that's really, really important as we sit here at the lower bound for a long time. I think one of your previous guests was highlighting the fact that, we could expect to be here at the zero bound until 2023 and just seeing the commitment for the Fed to not, wait till inflation is perhaps running much higher than 2%, their previous target, really let things go here. But keeping that transmission mechanism low through buying so many agency mortgages here, we just think it's so supportive for risk markets and so supportive for lowering borrowing costs, particularly for U.S. homeowners.
Sam, how important is it for you to get another round of fiscal stimulus out of the U.S. Congress here?
We think it'd be important for consumer credit in particular. I think the key, though, as I pointed out, is really structured credit investors thinking about the collateral that backs the bonds that we target. We really favor areas like U.S. housing just because of the stability of the U.S. house looking forward for RMBS, and areas like auto ABS where we see improving vehicle valuations here and more of a V-shaped like recovery in areas of consumer credit. So even if we see an uptick in delinquencies due to the lack of additional fiscal stimulus here, really looking to the collateral values and applying appropriate stress metrics as we look forward. But I think the key here, and if you couple both the fiscal and monetary stimulus, the cash mountain that's been created up to this point is definitely pointing from our perspective as we look to the balance of the year as more of a V-shaped rebound. We have a long slog clearly to get back to previous GDP levels, but we think the economy is well positioned just given this cash mountain to do so.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Sam Dunlap, Chief Investment Officer, Public Strategies at Angel Oak Capital Advisors. Joining us on the phone from Atlanta, we didn't get a chance to talk about Georgia Bulldog football, but
where is your Georgia accent? I forgot to ask.
Yeah, it disappeared when I moved to Boston, Massachusetts when I was 8 or 6.
That explains
it.
So
those horrible Yankee children, Yankee children, they made fun of my sweet Southern accent, as my mother would say. All right, the close of trading is coming up. Stick with us. J.C. Kelly, Paul Sweeney, here on Business Week.
With a new day comes new COVID-19.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to an algorithm? Or to someone called Al, or Sean, or Luth, or Ange, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hi, it's Ali. What are you searching for?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Steph. She's a bus driver.
Now that people are using public transport again, we really need to make sure that we keep each other safe. Passengers need to stay 2 meters apart. If that's not possible, make it at least 1 meter. I want to see everyone wearing face coverings over their mouth and nose unless you've got a good reason not to. And when you get to where you're going, you need to wash your hands. We've still got to play our part.
Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
Where do hockey and pop culture coexist?
So let me get this straight. You would be able to name more people nostalgically than currently? This doesn't.
Come on.
You're crazy. I know.
Other podcast Puck Soup NHL analyst Greg Wyshynski, Sean McAdoo, and Ryan Lambert chase the conversational biscuit up and down the ice, skating between serious discussion on what's happening in pro hockey to irreverent opinions on movies, fast food, and life in general. Search Puck Soup on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
On the Media heads to Montgomery, where a new memorial to lynching victims asks us all to face this country's past.
I think people realize, something bad probably did happen. And they don't want to acknowledge it because they're afraid they're going to be punished for it. I have no interest in punishing this nation for its history. I want to liberate us.
On this week's special episode of On the Media from Alabama. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Hi, this is Mike Tirico, introducing you to Sports Uncovered, the newest podcast series from the storytellers at NBC Sports that will shine a fresh light on the most unforgettable moments in sport.
The reason why I'm smiling, I might get in trouble for this.
Search Sports Uncovered to start listening today.
We're all guilty of spending too much time on social media. Why not add something genuinely useful to your feed with TuneIn? Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about some of the best stuff happening around the app. You might just discover your next audio obsession.
Come on the Bloomberg Business app and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. There you have it, sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange as we wrap up trading on this Monday, July 6th. Stocks jumped. Tech shares pushing NASDAQ to a record. The dollar fell for a fifth day. Treasuries dipped. S&P 500 index scoring its fifth straight increase. Amazon shares reached $3,000 for the first time. Tesla extended a 5-day rally to almost 40%. So the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all surging. Here are the closing numbers. S&P up 49, a gain of 1.6%. The Dow rallying 459 points, up 1.8%. At the best level, the Dow had been up 469, so closing very close to the best level of the session. NASDAQ, as I mentioned, a record there, up 226 points, up 2.2%. And the 10-year down 3/30 seconds with a yield of 0.68%. So stocks rallied. Stocks began the week in an upbeat mood after a front page editorial in China's Securities Times. Securities Times said that fostering a healthy bull market after the pandemic is now more important to the economy than ever. Well, as for the Federal Reserve, as for stimulus, Sam Dunlap is Chief Investment Officer of Public Strategies at Angel Oak Capital Advisors. He was our guest moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
It's hard to describe how beneficial that's been to all risk markets, but particularly as it relates to the consumer and getting that transmission mechanism, particularly through these lower mortgage rates to the U.S. borrowers. And we think that's really, really important as we sit here at the lower bound for a long time.
Amazon shares top $3,000 for the first time, extending a rally that has left most Wall Street analysts in the dust. Today, we did see shares of Amazon rallying 5.8%, up at $3,057. So again, recapping, a move higher for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. 10-year yield 0.68%. Gold up 0.6%. Crude down 4 cents, $40.59 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Wild thing, think you move me. I got a few moves I know you'll like.
Oh, come on, shake him, not stir.
Just move on toward your destination. I can make things move without touching them. Shaking all over.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
And you are listening to a Monday edition of Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly alongside Paul Sweeney down in New Jersey. I'm here in New York. We're doing that work from home thing. Week 17, I believe it is, Paul Sweeney, which is
I remember when we first started, it's like a week or two, see how it goes, and wow.
Here we are. Here we are, and the stock market continues to grind higher. Let's take a look at the S&P before we get into some specific names. An overwhelmingly positive trade, 410 names up, 92 down, 3 unchanged. Let me just make sure that's where it settled out. Actually, 412 to 92, 3 unchanged. So as it settles in, we definitely see a positive vibe. And, you know, as you heard Charlie say, the tech stocks really leading the way. And, you know, Amazon, man, I think we just can't talk enough about that name.
I agree. You talk about, I mean, this is a company pre-pandemic, which was already on a moonshot, a long-term moonshot. Everybody understood the story of e-commerce in the cloud. Those are the two drivers. They're long-term drivers. Everybody got it. Then the pandemic hit, and consumer behaviors were forced to change. And they changed such that those two core drivers for Amazon get even more support. People are buying more and more stuff, getting more and more stuff delivered online. They're working from home, thereby putting more demand for corporations to have cloud computing capabilities to the max to support their work-from-home workforce. And it's just you turn around and, gee, who's the beneficiary there? Boom.
Yeah. So put on your analyst hat for me, Paul Sweeney. I mean, like, how do you start to value and model a company like this that both extends into or sort of deepens its existing portfolio, but obviously continues to extend and expand. And, you factor in the cloud, you factor in retail, all the things that you just said. Like, how do you get your arms around a company like this?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's, they're getting into new businesses. And right now, it used to be just one driver, one revenue driver, and that's just the e-commerce. How much money did they take from every e-commerce trade? Then it became the cloud, and that became a faster-growing business. And get this, it was actually profitable, unlike the core e-commerce business, which never really delivered much of a profit. And then they said, gee, let's get into the advertising business through our Amazon Prime. That's become the number 3 digital platform after Google and after Facebook for digital ad dollars.
Yeah.
Like overnight, they created this incredibly multi-billion-dollar business. And the reason they can do it is, A, they have the resources, but B, they have the patience to build these things out. And their shareholder base will say, oh, it's going to take 5 or 10 years for this business to turn profitable or to generate a return. That's fine, Jeff Bezos. We trust you. You've done it before.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to a much more important company, at least in my life, although Amazon is very important, Chipotle. I love Chipotle. I mean, my kids are fans. We're fans, my wife and I. Even my 2-year-old daughter, she'll put her face in a bowl of guacamole. Right. I mean, this is a company that came out and basically said, despite everything that's going on, it looks like we're going to have a pretty good second half.
Yeah, when you think about these restaurant stocks, we've spoken to a lot of analysts over the last several months, and they obviously took a huge hit as the restaurants shut down, but then some of those fast casual and fast, a little bit on the faster, more casual end, they have been the first to really emerge here, and they're getting a lot of the dollars that the sit-down restaurants or eat-in restaurants are, unfortunately not getting. So really doing well here. And Mike Halen, who covers restaurants for Bloomberg Intelligence, has been talking about this name for a while.
Yeah, it's been really a fascinating one to watch, especially when you think about where they were a couple years ago.
Yes,
I mean, just in a very, very bad place. All right, before we do the VIX and Dave Wilson, I got to ask you, because I have you captive, Paul Sweeney. Disney, big weekend for Hamilton, but then also a little bit of a boost, it sounds like, from the governor of Florida.
Yeah, exactly. The governor of Florida is saying, and now it's a little bit of obviously patting himself on the back, but he's saying basically the theme parks in Florida are opening the correct way. He singled out Universal, which is owned by Comcast, and of course the Disney parks, all the parks they have in Orlando. I can tell you, Disney investors and Disney management is still very, very cautious here about this thing could go well or could turn ugly here, because we just don't know about this virus and how you bring people together in an outdoor locations. And so Disney's trying its best, and if anybody can execute that type of thing, it's the folks from Walt Disney.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a quick look at volatility. Up just a touch, about 0.5% closing at 27.82. It's Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson. Dave Wilson back with your stock of the day. What you got?
I've got Marcus, Jason. And we're not talking about the Goldman Sachs Investment Bank or the Consumer Bank or anything like that. Marcus Corporation is the 4th largest U.S. theater owner with more than 90 locations and 1,100 screens. The company owns and or manages 19 hotels and resorts, including 3 hotels in its home city of Milwaukee. Marcus was founded in 1935 and went public in 1972. The ticker is MCS. The company shares rose to a record as last year began. They ended the year down 20%. This year, they fell as much as 78% as the coronavirus basically shut down its business, which is only starting to come back. Yet data compiled by Bloomberg shows Marcus has nothing but buy ratings from analysts as of today. B. Riley FBR changed its call to buy from neutral, citing the potential value of the company's real estate. B. Riley also increased its 12-month share price estimate by 80% to $27. The target exceeds those at the other 2 firms following the stock, Barrington Research and Benchmark. Not the most covered company for sure. Nonetheless, markets drew closer to those targets by recording its biggest gain in a month. The shares are up 10.4% on the day.
All right, good.
God, I've covered the media industry for 30 years. I've never heard of Marcus, Dave. You pull these companies out of nowhere. I think you make them up sometimes.
No, I don't make them up.
I'm here on my Bloomberg Terminal feverishly trying to figure out, what do these Marcus folks do? And it's a real company.
Yeah,
it is. It's just they don't put their names on their theaters like AMC does or whatever. Maybe that's the reason you don't know them.
Yeah.
And they're in the Midwest.
You taught Paul Sweeney something today, Dave Wilson.
Exactly.
Nicely done. All right, let's head out to San Francisco now. Ed Baxter is there. Hello, Ed.
Hi, Jason. Dave, don't take that from him. Mixed bag of COVID-19 reporting day. First, the good. New York has entered into phase 3.
1,000 businesses were inspected this weekend. 85% were in immediate compliance. Those that needed to make adjustments, the inspectors stayed until issues were addressed.
Yeah, dine-in restaurants still open. Question. Mayor Bill de Blasio saying the positivity threshold at its pandemic testing low, 1%. Very good news. While cases are still going up in New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy says more openings there as well.
Summer camp and educational programs for our youth have been green-lighted to reopen. Outdoor graduations may be held to celebrate the class of 2020.
New Jersey transit is up as well. California not as good. Governor Gavin Newsom says positivity rates continue to grow quickly.
We were at 4.9% positivity rate just 14 days ago. And now again it's 6.8%. You look at the 7-day positivity rate, it's now over 7%.
The increase has slowed in small margin. Arizona and Texas. Miami is doing more closing of bars and restaurants. White House is endeavoring to clarify the president's comments COVID-19 is 99% harmless.
Was a factual statement, one that is rooted in science, and one that was pointing out the fact that mortality in this country is very low.
Yeah, that is White House spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany. The World Health Organization, by the way, says about 20% of those diagnosed progress to severe illness. 20% does not equal 1%. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
With perspective comes clarity.
Each week, the story seems to change.
The best experts bring you the most clarity.
Give us a sense of what's going on in the IPO market these days.
Vonnie Quinn.
Will there be an interest from LPs in newer managers here?
Paul Sweeney.
How are companies marketing their deals here in the time of COVID and social distancing?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this evening. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that laptop can help you improve your home setup. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Here's to you that learned with homeschooling that your kids are smarter than you. Here's to all the self-taught banana bread bakers. And to you that rock that very questionable homemade haircut. Costa is giving £3 to everyone that missed us as much as we missed you. Get your £3 in the Costa app today and enjoy a coffee, cake, or snack on us. Come on, you earned it. Terms and conditions apply. For details, visit costa.co.uk/terms.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
When you're facing a problem, like how to make an electric car more efficient, you could sit down and talk it through. But at Honda, we decided to listen to the wind tunnel. With wing mirrors? Or without? With? Without? With? Without? Or with cameras instead of wing mirrors? The new Honda E with wind cameras, not mirrors, because we listen to the wind. Honda, the power of dreams.
You always say the best thing you ever did was join up. I bet you don't get the same experiences in Civvy Street, especially...
New order placed to sell short Euro USD at 113.11.5. So I'm placing an order to sell short Euro at 113.11.5.
First, we're told that masks don't work. Then, we're told to wear them all the time. One week, we hear that the mortality rate is 2%. The next, well, who knows? In the time of COVID-19, there is so much uncertainty, and so much scientists are learning in real time, along with the rest of the world. So it's hard to know what you can be sure of and what's still a big question mark. Podcast 19 from 538, where we'll explore the evidence behind the science in our fight against coronavirus. I'm science journalist Anna Rothschild. Each week, I'll investigate coronavirus mysteries, keep track of the latest developments on vaccines and treatments. Oh, and I'll try to edit out all the times I shush my family since I'm recording this thing from the chaos of my home.
Search Podcast 19 to listen today. Where do hockey and pop culture coexist?
So let me get this straight. You would be able to name more people nostalgically than currently? This doesn't...
Come on.
You're crazy. I know.
Other podcast Puck Soup NHL analyst Greg Wyshynski, Sean McAdoo, and Ryan Lambert chase the conversational biscuit up and down the ice, skating between serious discussion on what's happening in pro hockey to irreverent opinions on movies, fast food, and life in general. Search Puck Soup on TuneIn to listen.
At Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stock surge. NASDAQ at a record. Stocks began the week on an upbeat note after a front-page editorial in China's Securities Times said that fostering, quote, a healthy bull market after the pandemic is now more important to the economy than ever. Stocks jumped. Gains in technology shares pushed NASDAQ to a record, as I mentioned. Today, NASDAQ surged 226 points, up 2.2%, bringing its year-to-date gains to 16.3%. S&P up 49 today, up by 1.6%. To put the NASDAQ gain in context, S&P does remain lower by 1.6% year-to-date. The Dow surged 459 points, up 1.8%. 10-year down 3/30 seconds with a yield of 0.67%. Gold up 0.6%, 17.86 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude 40.61 a barrel, down 0.1%. Recapping a Monday rally, S&P up 49, up 1.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, when the world is going haywire, especially when it comes to trade and especially when it comes to the United States and China, what do we need? Paul Sweeney, we need a double shot of Stefan Seelig. That's what we need. Managing partner for Bridge Park Advisors and, of course, former Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade at the Department of Commerce during the Obama administration. Joining us on the phone from Long Island. Stefan, how the heck are you? It's been a while.
It has. I am fine, Jason. Good to hear your voice. And please pass on my regards to Carol, and good to talk to you, Paul, as well.
I will certainly do that. Thanks for joining us. So I got to ask you, I mean, since we last talked, which was probably a month, 6 weeks ago, U.S.-China relations, I feel like, have taken a turn and a turn and a turn all downward in many ways. Where are we right now?
Well, I think you're quite right. I think the relationship with China needs to be described as one under increasing duress, with the dynamic of the relationship only getting more challenging. And, in our conversations in the past, we were largely focused on, the trade spat that we had with China, which the current administration largely viewed in the context of our bilateral trade deficit, primarily in manufactured goods. But in the recent weeks, we've seen that really become, or that conflict become expanded and take on a number of different fronts. And the technology war has come really into focus from more than just cyber theft and intellectual property issues to just last week, as you know, the FCC labeled ZTE and Huawei as security threats. And now we're also faced with a number of ideological issues coming out of China, and those are being manifest in the recently imposed Hong Kong security laws. And, of course, the issue with the Uyghurs in China and our recently just passed the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act, which was signed into law. So not only is it deteriorating, Jason, I think it is becoming more complex, and the tensions are taking on a number of different fronts.
So, Stefan, I was talking about this very topic earlier this morning, and the guest we had on challenged the premise I had, which was President Trump was primarily responsible for this increasing tension between the two countries with trade war and tariffs and rhetoric. And this guest pushed back and said, no, it's actually President Xi, in his opinion, that was kind of instigating the challenging tensions between the U.S. and China by China asserting more aggressively its presence economically, militarily, and not just in the region, but globally. How do you view how we got here? Is there any blame to be put around here? Or is it equally shared?
No, Paul, I think it's a mistake to ascribe blame to any individual or any leader. And I think this really is a function of certain structural issues that are much more important than any one individual. And so if you look at the trade issue, it is primarily a function of the fact that China, after being accepted into the World Trade Organization, still remains a largely state-controlled economy, and has limited market access for foreign companies and supports a large portion of their economy from the state. One. Two is, if you look at the technology issues, China, in fact, has very little flexibility here. They are going to cannot rely on the U.S. and the West for technology. If they're going to move up the value chain and avoid this so-called middle-income trap, if they want to continue to grow wealth and prosperity in their country. And as it relates to the human rights issues, the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party, has never expressed a real interest in human rights, and we've seen that, for generations, and as recently as Tiananmen Square. And so none of that should come as a surprise to us. So I think all of this predates Xi, predates Trump, and is fundamentally a reflection of two different systems that are largely incompatible.
So, Stefan, Hong Kong, how big of a deal is that, both in economic terms and financial terms, especially when it comes to our core audience, as you know, being Wall Street, but also as a marker in the evolution of China-U.S. relations?
I think China would not be behaving as aggressively with Hong Kong as they have been if they didn't believe, certainly from a Chinese perspective, that the economic fallout would be limited, because they do look at the management of their economy as a core competency of the Chinese Communist Party, and obviously they're facing similar sort of pressures coming out of COVID. So I don't think they view these Hong Kong issues through an economic lens as being highly problematic. I think from our your audience's perspective, this was inevitable. We knew it was going to happen. We just didn't know it was going to necessarily happen this quickly. But I think more than anything, it points out that the Chinese view about the rule of law, because don't forget, they had an agreement that they entered into that this sort of thing exactly wouldn't happen. But their view about these sorts of agreements, I think, is not going to be particularly vertical, and they are going to continue to behave in a way that is in their narrow best interest.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I talk to people about this, and I mean, there is a sort of simple explanation, sort of Occam's razor, which is Beijing essentially is like, yeah, we had an agreement, but we changed our mind, and this is what it's going to be from now on. All right, Stefan Selig, not to make light of it, but it does feel like that's what's happened. All right, Stefan Selig is going to stick with us. We got lots more to talk about. We're going to talk Wall Street, deal making, maybe a little more trade on the other side of this. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Paul Sweeney here with you on a Monday.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street returned from the long weekend in a buying mood. Stocks closed sharply higher. The Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped 460. The S&P 500 gained 50. The Nasdaq surged 226 to another record high. Uber climbed 6% after it agreed to buy Postmates for $2.6 billion. The deal will give Uber a larger foothold in the food delivery business, with demand for ride-hailing stuck in a pandemic-related slump. Dominion Energy lost 11% as it began to turn its back on natural gas. The nation's second-largest power company is selling most of its gas business to Berkshire Hathaway and killing its Atlantic Coast gas pipeline. Florida's governor is praising efforts by the state's theme parks to safely reopen amid the pandemic. He said he's impressed with what Universal has done. He calls Disney's plan very thorough as it prepares to reopen this weekend. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
If trying to figure out the future of your business is keeping you up at night,
are you seeing it come back at all?
At least you have company.
What do you make of the most recent virus headlines?
How should labor respond?
You're hoping to get political pressure?
Experts, information, breaking news, all day, all night, everywhere.
Do you expect the euro to continue to strengthen?
Why even have this hearing?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Economics.
All this doom.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Monday evening by the scruff of the neck. Picture your dream career and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
Here's to you that learned with homeschooling that your kids are smarter than you. Here's to all the self-taught banana bread bakers. And to you that rock that very questionable homemade haircut. Costa is giving £3 to everyone that missed us as much as we missed you. Get your £3 in the Costa app today and enjoy a coffee, cake, or snack on us. Go on, you earned it. Terms and conditions apply. For details, visit costa.co.uk/terms.
And action.
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
We've got some of your faves waiting for you on Just Eat. KFC, Burger King, and Subway. Spend as much or as little as you like. No minimum spend here. We'll always deliver like a G. I mean, I would know. I'm pretty G myself, thank you very much.
Heard somebody say, just eat.
T's and C's apply. Selected stores and locations.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 20...
I'm canceling to sell short order of Euro USD. So order to sell short at 113.11.5 cancelled.
Trace helps stop the spread of the virus in our communities. If you've got symptoms, even mild ones, get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we can trace the people you've been in contact with and contain the virus. So get tested and protect each other.
To get a test, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
This is the home that stays in together. Zoflora's things clean in this sunny weather.
That disinfects doorknobs, floors, baked bean cans.
Fills rooms with fragrance. Does meetings in gin jams.
This is a home that cares with pride.
Shares smiles and waves with those either side.
Because this is your London, not inside alone.
But all house proud together, one big beautiful home.
Zoflora, killing germs beautifully since 1922.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with Stefan Seelig, but first, let's get an update on the headlines from Charlie Pellet. Hey, Charlie.
Hello there, Jason Kelly. Let's begin with the closing numbers. What a day on Wall Street. Back to work Monday. NASDAQ at a record 5 in a row for the S&P. The Dow closing at or near session highs. The Dow up 459 points today, up 1.8%. S&P advanced 49, up 1.6%. NASDAQ up 226 points, up 2.2%. Year to date, NASDAQ is up 16.3%. Tenured on 230 seconds with a yield of 0.67%. Gold up 0.6%, 17.86 the ounce. Crude right now unchanged, $40.65 a barrel. Stocks jumped. Gains in tech shares pushing NASDAQ to a record. S&P had its longest winning streak since December. Amazon shares rose past $3,000 for the first time. So where do markets go from here? Alicia Levine is Chief Strategist for Investment Management at Bank of New York Mellon.
The direction of travel is upward overall, and I don't think this should be shaken out here. And you can hedge and you can change your sectors that you're interested in. There are many sectors that simply have not participated yet, but the direction of travel for the economy is upward, even if shallower than we hoped 2 weeks ago, still upward.
T. Rowe Price Group is joining the growing trend of ETFs that report their holdings once every quarter. The Baltimore-based company has received approval from the SEC to start 4 active, non-transparent exchange-traded funds. The products will use the same investment strategies as their corresponding mutual funds. T. Rowe Price up today by 2%. Remember when Tesla's market value surpassed GM? That was back in October, though investors can't be blamed for thinking it was a lifetime ago. The electric vehicle maker's valuation has added the combined value of the big three, GM, Ford, and Fiat Chrysler, in just 5 trading days through today. Tesla has grown by an average of $14 billion on each of those days. Tesla shares up again today. Tesla shares adding another 13.4%. Recapping, equities higher, S&P up 49, up 1.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. We appreciate that. We still have our good friend Stefan Seelig. He is with us. He is a managing partner, Bridge Park Advisors. Also, former Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade at the U.S. Department of Commerce during the Obama administration. He joins us on the phone from Long Island. So, Stefan, in the last block, we were chatting about China as it relates to rising tensions with the U.S., trade, tariffs, Hong Kong. I'm going to talk about the economics of China right now. Obviously, the days of double-digit growth are gone. I think the printed number that they want you to buy into is a 6% kind of GDP growth. Really give us a sense of where you think China is over the next couple of years in terms of its ability to grow its economy.
Well, look, China is clearly slowing, but they were slowing from, a very rapid growth, and they will continue to be, the engine of Asia. And so, I do think the most interesting question for China is going to be their ability to move from a manufacturing infrastructure-based economy to a more consumer-based economy, which is, and has been challenging for a number of developing economies. But that will be the key and clearly what the Chinese Communist Party is focusing on to get to the next leg of growth.
So, Stefan, got to talk deal making because we had Uber do a deal. We had, Mr. Buffett pull something off. We've had some activity when it comes to M&A. You are ultimately a deal maker. How's it feel out there right now?
Jason, it's muted for sure. I think deal activity is likely to be concentrated in certain sectors, and those sectors are largely going to align with those sectors that are doing well. Right before you had me back, one of your commentators was talking about record highs in technology shares and in the NASDAQ. So you could imagine, whether it's Uber and Postmates or other similar companies, that there will be enthusiasm for deals in those sectors, but I don't think you're going to see broad-based deal-making activity across the more cyclical parts of our economy.
Stefan, I know you've spent some time in your career on the TMT space, technology, media, telecommunications. Boy, we're seeing an industry that's just been disrupted, the traditional media business, like you've never seen, culminating in the Walt Disney Company buying out most of Rupert Murdoch's News Corp. Do you ever expect the big technology companies, Apple, Google, Facebook, to ever jump into the deep end of the pool and get into the content side of the business?
Who knows? Those particular buyers have unlimited capital. Those six companies that you're referencing make up something like 20% of the overall market cap of our entire equity markets. And a lot of those traditional media companies in certain sectors are obviously facing very challenging times. And so you could imagine, real deal-making activity in some of those areas as those companies look to take advantage of depressed valuations across the sector.
And how's Wall Street feeling right now, Stefan, just before we let you go? I mean, beyond just deal-making, you talk to a lot of very senior people on Wall Street. We're talking about kind of going back to work-ish. What's sort of the mood around the Wall Street community?
I think it pretty much mirrors what's happening in the overall economy, which is a mood of uncertainty and some instability. I think people really don't know what the new normal is going to be. I think to some degree, because the markets have outperformed the real economy, there's some, if not enthusiasm on Wall Street, there's certainly not panic. The fixed income markets have been highly receptive to capital raising throughout this coronavirus pandemic, even in those industries that are facing some significant challenges. And so I think in terms of Wall Street, people are expecting less M&A deal-making activity, but a pretty robust financing calendar, both on the equity and on the fixed income side, to keep folks busy.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, Stefan Seelig, great to catch up with you. Always a treat. Stefan Seelig is managing partner for Bridge Park Advisors and a former Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade at the Department of Commerce during the Obama administration. He joined us on the phone from Long Island. And Paul Sweeney, I mean, between China and everything else. I mean, so much to unpack there in many ways.
It really is. And, one thing I'm wondering is if there is a Biden administration next time around, how will the U.S. deal with China? Will they, I think a lot of people buy off on the fact that, Trump's methods may not be sound, but the underlying issue of we need to do a tougher job with China, that has a lot of support.
Absolutely. And Stefan Zielik has said that to us before, and he should know, given the job that he had. All right, let's head out to San Francisco now. Ed Baxter is there with headlines. Hey, Ed.
All right. Thank you, Jason. U.S. snapshot of virus activity shows some very good news out of New York City with a 1% positivity in cases, but not so good in California, where it's 6.8%. New Jersey, the transmission rate has gone to 1.03%, which is the highest in 10 weeks. Arizona, Texas showing a slight slowing in cases, but Miami is reclosing some businesses after its reopening. And presidential leadership is being an issue today, is being made an issue today as governors most universally asking for people to wear masks.
If he does not acknowledge that, then he is facilitating the virus. He is enabling the virus. How did this become a political statement?
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says the president has to step up, but the president's chief of staff, Mark Meadows.
That's done on a location basis when you can't have social distancing, but certainly a national mandate is not in order. We're allowing our governors and our local mayors to weigh in on that.
Now, if Pew polling is correct today, voters where people didn't listen to the guidelines now have large surges in cases are turning against the president. The Sun Belt, Pew finds between March and June a 34-point swing against the president. These are states he carried in 2016. And even Senator Lindsey Graham is finding some disagreement with some of Mr. Trump's statements. Take his tweet that the NASCAR on the noose hoax.
You saw the best in NASCAR. When there was a chance that it was a threat against Bubba Wallace, they all rallied to Bubba's side.
And the U.S. Supreme Court is letting states stop so-called faithless presidential electors. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Are you interested in a challenging and
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
Hey
I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this evening. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and talk laptops and washing machines or fridges and TVs. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
So I often struggled at school. Once, when we had a maths test, I looked around the room and everyone was just doing it. And I couldn't, and I began to cry. But my teacher came over and said, it might look like one big problem, but it's just a handful of small ones, and you can deal with that. I hear her voice in my head for every problem I face to this day.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. You could get £26,000 tax-free to train as a teacher. Subject to eligibility, selected subjects only. Search Get Into Teaching.
Are you ready to play?
This summer ITV Hub is fully loaded with loads more fall series.
Gonna get messy.
Yeah, like it's fuller than ever. From Love Island to Liar, we have divas lined up back to back.
Filmy and Sister.
From the GC and the Ibiza Weekend, the reps, the Real Housewives, it's round full of lots and lots of...
This is getting too much now.
Laughs, tears and smiles. It's crammed full with full series like Wiz, Flesh and Blood, Harry's Heroes and Manx in Mumbai. We've grown, expanded and just gone a bit extra this summer.
Give me some on.
ITV Hub fully loaded this summer.
The best experience possible.
Did we mention it's looking fuller than ever?
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
At Simply Be, we've stepped up our sales so that you can step out in style. With up to 80% off summer clothing, you'll find some seriously must-have fashion at prices that are simply too good to miss. So go on, skip those weekend queues and treat yourself to something gorgeous. Shop the sale at simplybe.co.uk.
Did somebody say just me?
Get delivery like a G. See, hungry dogs gotta eat. I get mines every day, every week. Chicken wings to the crib, I'm sitting in. Burger in the low. Hope they put the pickle in. Wonton on a catamaran. Oodles and noodles, thank you, my man. Justeat.
Somebody say just eat.
Give yourself a Diet Coke break.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellett. Developing story, Town Sports is noting what it calls a substantial going concern doubt for the company. It was an up day on Wall Street with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all surging. Tech shares pushing NASDAQ to a record. S&P posting its 5th straight increase today. S&P was up 49, a gain of 1.6%, 3179. The Dow up 459 points, up 1.8%. NASDAQ up 226. That was a gain of 2.2%. 10-year down 230 seconds with a yield of 0.67%. Gold up 0.5%, 17.85 the ounce. And crude, West Texas Intermediate, flat at $40.65 a barrel. Air New Zealand is suspending new inbound international bookings. Air New Zealand says that suspension follows a request from the New Zealand government. Again, recapping equities rally, S&P 500 index surging 49 points, up 1.6%. I'm Charlie Pellett. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Paul Sweeney here with you on a Monday afternoon. And the end of last week, we had a special Jobs Thursday, both jobless claims and the monthly jobs report. And we also were reminded by Chris Condon, our ACE Fed reporter, earlier in this show about the Fed's dual mandate, and part of it, one half of it, is all around employment. So let's talk about jobs, Paul, if we can. Becky Frankwitz is back with us, president of Manpower Group North America, on the phone from Chicago. And Becky, we're delighted to have you back with us to help us understand what this employment picture looks like. We've all now had a little bit of time to digest that, what felt like a blockbuster jobs report last week. What does it look like on the ground? You guys have one of the most sort of intimate and expansive views of the labor market out there. What are you seeing?
Thank you, Jason. Nice to be back with you. The last time that you and I spoke, we were talking about some pretty devastating numbers.
Yeah.
The April job figures basically wiped out a decade of employment gains. But we've been tracking this real time, and I'm encouraged, is what I would say, to say that just 8 weeks later, the picture's beginning to look different, Jason. I mean, we're not through the crisis. We're nowhere near through the crisis. But on a national level, we're starting to see green shoots of optimism. Now, the shoots are fragile. You heard, I'm sure, earlier today about Miami-Dade County, shutting down gyms and restaurants. We know what's happening in Arizona and Texas. And so we can expect the recovery to be phased and hyper-local, a few steps forward, a few steps back. Yet we are starting to see some encouraging news coming out of the jobs report. I think it exceeded most people's expectations. We know because we're seeing demand increase day to day as we go through job postings. But I'd say it's encouraging.
So, Becky, how do we kind of bring these two data points together, the one being the unemployment data that comes out showing, again, I guess June adding 4.8 million jobs, with the jobless claims continue to run, they're getting better and better week to week, but they're still stubbornly high. I think the last one was 1.5 million jobless claims. And so how do you kind of square those two phenomena?
Yes, I would say what we're seeing first is that employers are bringing back workers they furloughed. So that's really what you saw quite a bit of in the 4.8 million jobs that came out on Thursday. Yet at the same time, we are still seeing state and local variation, some setbacks from the crisis and people afraid about a recurrence. And so you see jobless claims, again, at a slowing pace, but continuing to increase. The other thing we're seeing that wasn't reported is, again, in job demand. So we have over 7 million open jobs in the country today. Employers are beginning to cautiously take their finger off the pause button and start to look at hiring again. And we're, of course, seeing demand increase in those states that are, quote unquote, opened versus those that are closed.
And so talk to us a little bit more about the types of jobs, Becky, because one of the things that we keep hearing is that, the nature of work for some people will be fundamentally and as permanent as anything can be changed in the near to midterm. What are you seeing, especially as you see these reopening markets, maybe setting aside where we're seeing some of those hot spots? How has the nature of work changed, or where are you seeing the most progress?
Yeah, so I'd say a couple of things. First and foremost, remote working. We saw entire industries, my own included, go remote overnight. So the technology to work remote is alive and well and now adopted because many companies had the capability, Jason, they just weren't using it. It wasn't acceptable. So now we've seen remote work really take off. And on the program, I think it was November or December when we spoke, I shared that the fastest growing non-wage benefit in the country, this is months before the pandemic, was remote working. And so we know that workers want this, and now technology is enabling it, and companies are accepting it. And so I say that to answer your question. We're seeing about 16% of job postings not list a location. And that's up from 10% just a couple of months ago. And so we've seen it, by the way, go as high as 25%. And so increasingly, this concept of, performance over presenteeism is taking off. So that's one. The second piece I would mention is retail. So in the states that are opening, we're seeing a surge in retail workers. Now, of course, grocery retail was essential. So that's
okay, ladies and gentlemen, time's up for today. Hope you liked our stream. So if you subscribe or like our channel, it will be greatly appreciated. And I'll speak to you all tomorrow, as always, from 8 o'clock UK time. Have a great evening.
And they were forced to go back to work. They were just furloughed for a couple of weeks and then essentially forced to go back to work because the company did not have the telecommunications capability